Chapter 145. Yes, Lord Demon God is still over there, the tall snake demon replied respectfully. Humph, get lost. As soon as the voice fell, the snake demons had already twisted their thick tails and ran away. Long Houchen put his left hand behind his back and gave a thumbs up. Chen Inger giggled. My acting skills have improved again. Lin Xian chuckled. That's quite impressive, Lord Demon Dragon Queen. It was obviously impossible to deceive all the demons just by relying on the appearance of the moon devils. Long Houchen and the others had entered the demons for a long time, so they naturally had their own methods. Chen Inger's mirror god pig was naturally the most important of these methods. With its powerful imitation ability, it could imitate some dark aura and get away with it. Although their mission this time was to kill 100 snake demons, now was obviously not the time to act. At the same time, they also received reliable news that Andamari was still in the dark swamp. This small town looked very flourishing. It was even more flourishing than some of the inner demon cities. There was an endless stream of demons on the streets. Among them, the most common was the Snake Demon clan. Naturally, among the other demon clans, the dual-bladed demons were the most numerous. Perhaps because this place was relatively small, it did not restrict the entry of the dual-bladed demons like those big cities. Long Houchen's appearance attracted a lot of attention as soon as they entered the town. Being stared at by so many curious eyes was obviously not a comfortable thing. The solution to the problem was simple. After the heaven-defying demon dragon aura appeared again, coupled with Long Houchen's threat to kill whoever looked again, they suddenly became a terrifying existence that everyone feared. The things that could be sold in this town were relatively poor. Among the demons there was no concept of money. Everything was bartered. Long Houchen directly took out some magic beast cores in exchange for clean drinking water and dried fish. He was also lucky enough to buy some fruit. They found a relatively clean hotel to stay in. Along the way, everyone was a little tired, so they rested early. Kerr shared a room with Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Inger. Although she seemed to have lost all her memories, she was much more cautious about the matters between men and women than before. Even Long Houchen, who was closest to her, couldn't get too close to her because he was a man. The dinner was simple. More importantly, everyone took a hot bath in the hotel. After a good night's rest, when everyone gathered again the next day, they all felt refreshed. Of course, Yiting and the 2 holy guards did not change much. Long Houchen called his companions into his room. We're going to enter the dark swamp today. I went out just now to buy a detailed map of the dark swamp, but there was no result. I asked around about the dark swamp. According to the demons in this town, the dark swamp is a very scary place. Not only is it a swamp that people can fall into, but there is also a lot of swamp gas. If you're not careful, you'll be poisoned. Even the snake demons, who have a strong resistance to poison, can't bear it. Not only that, there are several particularly powerful magic beasts living in the dark swamp. Even level 10 magic beasts may exist. I think this is why the snake demon god Andamari hasn't come out after exploring the dark swamp for so long. What he's looking for must be very precious, and there are existences in the swamp that are difficult for him to deal with. After we enter the swamp this time, there will be many dangers. So everyone must gather together. If anything goes wrong, everyone must listen to my orders. Absolutely do not fight, understand? Everyone nodded. Because they had the Tower of Eternity as a backup plan, they all had great confidence. After all, it was impossible for something like the awakening of Kai Er's god-favored constitution to happen again. With the improvement of Long Houchen's cultivation, his control over the Tower of Eternity was also increasing, and the speed and number of teleportations he could help everyone to increase. Boss, when do we act? Sima Xian asked. Long Houchen said, No hurry, the dark swamp isn't far from here. Noon is the time when the swamp gas is at its weakest. We have to wait until afternoon, when part of the swamp gas is melted by the sun, and then enter the swamp. Han Yu, Lin Xin, you two form a team. Sima, you and I form a team. We'll go out to collect some information about the dark swamp. Even if it's just a little bit more, it's good. After an hour, return to the hotel and gather, then set off for the dark swamp. Yuan, Inger, you two take care of Kai. The two girls nodded, and Long Houchen left the two holy guards behind. Only then did the four of them leave the hotel and inquire about information in the town. An hour passed quickly, and after Long Houchen and the others returned to the hotel, they summarized the information the four of them had collected. There was very little useful information about the actual situation inside the dark swamp. According to ordinary demons, it was difficult to come out alive after entering there. Therefore, the dark swamp was also known as the realm of death. Even the snake demons, who could easily move around inside with their physical advantages, did not dare to enter it. Everyone packed up their things and set off again under the leadership of Long Houchen. They quietly left the town and went straight in the direction of the dark swamp. Today's weather was good, the sun was shining, and the sky was clear. However, in the demon race's territory, no matter how clear the weather was, it was very difficult to see birds flying in the sky, because those non-magical beasts had long been eaten by the demon race over the past thousands of years. There were no living creatures left. When they arrived here, the air was much more humid than in the territory of the demons, and the wind and sand were not so strong. According to the map, if they continued east from here, they would reach the seaside in less than 500 miles. There was no telling how many demons were in charge of fishing out all kinds of fish. According to the Temple League, the fish in the coastal waters had almost been fished out by the demons. Most of the time, they had to go to the distant sea to hunt for more marine creatures as food. In order to ensure the number of fish caught, even some rank 9 demons joined in. Perhaps it was because the realm of death in the dark swamp was too terrifying. The further they went, the fewer demons they could meet. Everyone sped up, and about an hour later, it was almost noon. The air was getting more and more humid. The ground began to soften, and occasionally, a strange rotten smell would appear at the tip of their noses. They were almost at the dark swamp. After half an hour, they finally saw the destination of their trip. However, everyone's expression changed. Just looking at it from afar, they could feel the horror of the realm of death. In the distance, a large patch of light green fog enveloped a large area. This light green fog seemed to not disperse all year round, even under direct sunlight, it did not affect it at all. They could clearly see that the closer they got to the fog, the darker the color of the ground. At the edge of the fog, the ground had turned black. Occasionally, there would be a few bubbles formed by mud. That was where the strange smell and moist water vapor came from. It was impossible to see how big the dark swamp was, so Long Houchen deliberately spread his spiritual wings and flew into the air to take a look. He was surprised to find that the deeper the fog went, the darker the color. In the depths of the dark swamp, the fog was even dark green. As for how big this swamp was, he could not measure it, because the fog in the distance was too thick, obstructing his vision. Landing on the ground, Long Houchen and his companions gathered together and said in a low voice, "It seems that this realm of death is more difficult to deal with than we thought. Everyone must be careful later. Once we enter, our vision will likely be affected to a certain extent. Everyone must not disperse, gather around me. I will use light magic to disperse the fog. If we encounter an attack, everyone try to stay close to me. Let's take a look at the edge of the swamp first, then try to enter." Han Yu said in a low voice, "Captain, let me disperse the fog. You are the core of the team, it is more important to preserve enough strength." Long Houchen shook his head. "It's fine, I have already broken through to the 7th rank and opened 3 spiritual apertures. My spiritual energy recovery speed is much faster than yours. This bit of consumption is nothing. Let's go." The group of 7, together with the 2 holy guards and Yiting, quickly reached the edge of the swamp. The closer they got to the dark swamp, the softer the ground under their feet became. When they reached the edge, they felt like their bodies were about to sink. At this moment, the Holy Guard number 1 displayed its great power. Streams of cold air easily landed on the ground, and the water in the swamp froze into ice, supporting everyone's bodies. A layer of faint golden light spread from Long Houchen, enveloping all of his companions. It was the third-rank light magic, Holy Light Cover. The reason why he used Holy Light Cover instead of Aura Cover was because the defense of Holy Light Cover was much stronger, and it had healing and maintenance effects. Coupled with the light ripple that Long Houchen comprehended, not only could it absorb more light elements, but its defense was also comparable to a fourth-rank spell. As long as it didn't encounter a particularly strong attack, it could withstand for a while. Moreover, the biggest advantage of Holy Light Cover was that its coverage range could be increased according to the strength of the user's spiritual energy output. The visibility in the swamp was poor, so Long Houchen naturally expanded the Holy Light Cover. As his spiritual energy broke through 10,000, the spiritual apertures between his eyebrows and his abdomen began to increase as his chest was filled with spiritual energy. Long Houchen's current cultivation speed had greatly increased compared to when he was at the 6th rank. Even he himself was surprised by the speed of his improvement. In just half a month's time, his spiritual energy was already close to 11,000. Under the push of the Holy Light Cover, the poisonous mist was immediately pushed up. Although the air was still turbid, at least the poisonous mist couldn't enter the Holy Light Cover. If it was an ordinary Holy Light Cover, it would even be corroded by the poisonous mist. However, it was different when Long Houchen added light ripple to the Holy Light Cover. With just a slight vibration, the poisonous mist was shaken a certain distance away, preventing it from adhering. He then felt the consumption of his own spiritual energy. Long Houchen discovered that the consumption was far slower than his own recovery, so he nodded to his companions and took the lead to walk into the dark swamp with brilliant holy shield and light ripple in his hands. The 11th Holy Guard's control over the ice element could be said to be perfect. The places they walked through would once again become a swamp, but the ground they stepped on was absolutely solid. Coupled with Long Houchen's Holy Light Cover, they smoothly assisted the Commander-class Monster Hunt 64 to enter the swamp. The light in the swamp was very dim, and it was difficult for the sunlight to penetrate through the thick mist. After walking for about 100 meters, Long Houchen stopped and observed his surroundings. There were a large number of plants in the swamp. Most of them were vines that took root in the swamp. The color of these vines was similar to the poisonous mist. "Hanyu, if we are ambushed later, and my Holy Light Cover breaks, you have to replace it with another Holy Light Cover to protect everyone. At that time, remember to hold your breath and try not to breathe in the poisonous mist." "Yes," Hanyu replied. Although the poisonous mist wouldn't have much of an effect on them, it was still better not to breathe it in. It was better to be safe than sorry. Just as Long Houchen was speaking, suddenly, his eyes narrowed and looked towards a direction. Immediately, Yiting, who was behind him, felt his will, and a white light shot towards the mist. Following a low roar, a huge figure charged towards Long Houchen. The mist was very thick, and only when this fellow collided with the Holy Light Cover did everyone see its appearance. It was clearly a rather large lizard. This lizard was dark green in color, and its body was covered in abscesses. Its green eyes emitted a sinister glow, and it opened its mouth, charging towards Long Houchen to bite. Long Houchen's response could only be described as ingenious, and the Holy Light Cover retracted in front of him. The radiant Holy Shield lit up with a white light. It was the Holy Shield technique, and he used it to block the attack of the lizard. With a purring, the lizard fell, but Long Houchen did not move at all. His right hand had already slashed out with the ripple of light, and the light-severing sword that was flickering with the flames of light drew a beautiful arc in the air and ruthlessly slashed at the neck of the lizard. With a pew, blood splattered, and the lizard was sliced into two. Its blood was yellow-green, and it looked extremely disgusting. After being hacked to death, the corpse slowly sank into the mud of the swamp, and a series of bubbles rose. Lin Xian chuckled and said, "This fellow can't be a close relative of Haoyue, right?" Wang Yuanyuan rolled her eyes and said, "If you have the ability, say it in front of Haoyue." Long Haochen said in a low voice, "This is roughly a magical beast of the 5th rank, and it should be poisonous. It's a mutated creature of the swamp. If it were any other knight, even if they were at the 7th rank, their light-severing sword wouldn't be able to instantly kill a magical beast of the 4th rank, which was equivalent to a magical beast of the 5th rank. But Long Haochen's light-severing sword contained the ripple of light and the flames of light, coupled with the double attack of the ripple of light. In an instant it was a fatal blow. Through the lizard's reaction, he could determine the strength of the lizard in the shortest amount of time. "Master, I can make the surroundings a little cleaner," the 11th Holy Guard said in a low voice. Long Haochen looked at him in surprise and nodded. "All right, but try to conserve your spiritual power." The 11th Holy Guard said, "The water element here is very dense, so it won't consume too much." As he said that, he raised the staff in his hand, and with a low incantation, a layer of pale blue light spread out. This 11th Holy Guard's casting speed was faster than any magician that Long Haochen had ever seen. As the pale blue light spread out, a rustling sound gradually appeared in the air, and a strange scene appeared. The surrounding poisonous fog actually retreated at an astonishing speed, and in the blink of an eye, the area with a diameter of 50 meters became extremely clear. The poisonous fog was the combination of water vapor and poison, and the cold air released by the 11th Holy Guard had turned the water vapor into ice shards, naturally breaking the poisonous fog's origin. Moreover, Long Haochen also discovered that when these ice shards fell on the ground, it would naturally lower the temperature of the ground, and when the 11th Holy Guard condensed the ground again, he could correspondingly reduce the spiritual power output. This kind of cooperation and ingenious calculation could be said to be extremely ingenious. What Long Haochen noticed, so did Lin Xian. As a magician, he always thought that his control of magic power was already quite good, but compared to the 11th Holy Guard, he was trash. Therefore, he decisively took a step back, stood behind the 11th Holy Guard, and silently observed and felt all of the 11th Holy Guard's movements. As a teacher, Yiting also had the same understanding. Yiting already had complete self-awareness, and although it was mainly based on Long Haochen's will, her own learning ability was not bad. Yiting asked herself, in terms of purity, she should be far superior to the 11th Holy Guard. Moreover, as Long Haochen broke through to the 7th rank, it was equivalent to her breaking through to the 7th rank as well. The fusion of the spiritual stove and the benefits of the illusory paradise allowed her to become a true spiritual stove that could continuously evolve and grow. From a certain point of view, she had even become a true high elf, except that her life as a high elf belonged to Long Haochen. However, in terms of control and usage of magic power, Yiting realized that she was far inferior to the 11th Holy Guard, who was only in the form of a skeleton. Be it in terms of concept or actual control, there was an obvious gap. The 11th Holy Guard didn't respond to their attention, and only did what he was supposed to do. After completing the magic, he once again returned to silence. Long Haochen turned his head to give the 11th Holy Guard a thumbs up, and then continued to lead the group forward. With the power of the 11th Holy Guard's ice magic power, their vision was greatly broadened, and the pressure they felt when they entered the dark swamp was obviously reduced. The eyes were the window to the soul. Even if other senses could replace the eyes, almost everyone would still subconsciously believe in their own sight. Once they couldn't see, it was easy to panic. Of course, this didn't apply to Kai before she lost her memory. The further they went, the thicker the fog around them became, and the number of ice shards on the ground increased. This actually reduced the amount of spiritual power that the 11th Holy Guard needed to freeze the ground. The plants around them also became denser, and it wasn't just limited to vines anymore. There were even some special flowers and fruit. The road also started to become bumpy. To be precise, there was no road after entering the dark swamp. It was just that Long Houchen was leading the way. The vines in the swamp were especially tough. Even the light-severing sword that was imbued with ripple of light needed at least 2 to 3 slashes to cut through a vine. This task was requested by Long Houchen to be done by him alone, while the others were on guard. In this place that was full of danger, nothing was more important than safety. Kyr silently followed behind Long Houchen. She watched as the extremely young man in front of her continuously brandished the heavy sword in his hand to open up a path for his companions. The fear in her eyes gradually disappeared, and the sense of security of being protected appeared again. Gradually, something indescribable seemed to be surging in her heart. Occasionally, when she had a headache, some scenes would appear in her mind. Vaguely, it seemed that the man in front of her really existed. Because of this, her trust in Long Houchen was increasing. Her mood was also not as bad as when she first woke up. At least the people around her didn't make her feel threatened. Although she lost her memory, Kyr still had her intelligence. She clearly understood that if she didn't have these companions by her side after losing her memory, she was afraid that it would be really miserable. The feeling of having them around seemed to be really good. Just as Kyr was letting her imagination run wild, Long Houchen, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and frowned. Something seems wrong. He concentrated and sensed everything around him, but he couldn't find what was wrong with him. However, this feeling was getting stronger and stronger. It was a little similar to when they were surrounded by the 6 demon hunters led by a Bao, but the feeling was not as strong. This was an instinctive sense of danger. Long Houchen's eyes suddenly became fierce, and he shouted, "Kyr, be careful." He suddenly retreated, and his broad back directly hit Kyr's body. Although Kyr lost her memory, she still had her battle instincts. Long Houchen's sudden attack immediately stimulated her ability. Her right hand subconsciously slapped Long Houchen's back, and her body used the force to flip backward, directly hitting the holy light shield behind her. Just when she was filled with shock, there was a poof from the swamp on the ground, and a huge head suddenly drilled out, hitting right under Long Houchen's feet, directly knocking him off the ground. The huge head carried Long Houchen up rapidly, and it opened its bloody mouth, which was more than 2 meters in diameter. It was a green giant snake, and just the part that was exposed from the mud alone was more than 15 meters long. It was as thick as a water tank, and when it opened its huge mouth, it was even more terrifying. There was no warning before it appeared, and no one sensed its existence. Everything happened too suddenly. Golden light shone on Long Houchen's body, and 4 spiritual wings suddenly rushed out from his back. Although the holy light shield was broken, the holy light fire that rose from his body easily burned the surrounding poisonous fog. With the spiritual wings controlling his body, he naturally wouldn't fall and be devoured by the giant snake. His body stopped slightly in the air, and his whole body flipped. He cleverly flapped his spiritual wings, and his body flipped to the left, instantly dodging the giant snake's head. The giant snake's huge body also fell to the ground. However, it was easy to come out, but it was not so easy to go back. After a short moment of shock, everyone in the General Tier Monster Hunt 64 launched an attack at the giant snake. Everyone had been working together for a long time, and in the face of this sudden situation, although they were surprised, they didn't panic. The magicians quickly retreated, putting some distance between themselves and the giant snake. In close combat, Han Yu didn't directly attack. Instead, he raised the wild blood shield to protect the magicians, and the other close combat magicians all poured their attacks on the giant snake. Wang Yuan was the closest to it, and a huge silver shield suddenly appeared, and the tip of the giant soul god shield fiercely slashed at the giant snake's body. The giant soul god shield's attack power had always been strong. Although it wasn't completely embedded with space silver crystals, with Wang Yuanyuan's strength, she could support 2 space silver crystals all the time without too much consumption. However, the giant snake's defense was also quite amazing. The thick snakeskin was extremely flexible, and the giant soul god shield's destructive power was extremely strong, but it didn't even penetrate half a foot into the snake's skin before it was bounced back by the giant snake's strong muscles. However, it also brought with it a dark green juice. Wang Yuanyuan's attack was only the beginning. Sima Xian's vigorous ball of light arrived almost instantly, and the thick metal ball bombarded the giant snake's body, immediately causing a violent explosion. At this time, the giant snake's body had just rushed to the highest point, and the giant snake suddenly let out a mournful hiss. Although Sima Xian didn't use the power of the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder this time, the destructive power of the vigorous ball of light was too tyrannical. Even among the legendary equipment, it was definitely an existence that ranked among the top. Crushing, and triple explosion. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 violent explosions, the giant snake's huge body was bombarded to the side, and the area that was hit was a bloody mess, and a large area of the skin was damaged. A fiery red light flashed, and the 11th Holy Guard's Shura ruthlessly cut into Sima Xian's wound for a full 3 feet before it was bounced off by the giant snake. However, this attack had undoubtedly caused it to suffer heavy damage. Lin Xian's fire spell and the 11th Holy Guard's ice spear seemed to follow one after the other. At this time, the disparity in magic control was once again revealed. The 2 spells were released almost at the same time, and Lin Xian's fire spell was slightly slower by half a beat. However, when it looked like it was about to hit the giant snake, the 11th Holy Guard's ice spear suddenly paused, allowing the fire spell to bombard the giant snake's body first. The huge explosion once again caused the giant snake's wound to greatly expand, and after a second, the ice spear ruthlessly pierced into the wound, disappearing into it. At the same time, a white light quietly fell on the giant snake's body. Yuting's Saint Spiritual Stove, which was also Long Haochen's Saint Spiritual Stove. All of the giant snake's attention was drawn to Long Haochen. It was also at this time that a crisp voice suddenly sounded. "I'll chop you to death." Immediately afterward, everyone clearly felt a chill on their bodies. The fierce killing intent even caused the poisonous mist to scatter in fear. A sparkling and translucent gray light flashed and disappeared. The giant snake's body that was starting to fall suddenly froze. At that moment, the air seemed to produce a crisp, shattering sound. Immediately afterward, dark green juice swirled in all directions like a geyser. That giant snake that was as thick as a water tank was unexpectedly cut in half at the waist. One had to know that even with everyone's combined strength, they had only managed to injure its body. However, they had also deeply experienced the shocking defensive power of the giant snake's body. However, at this moment it was brazenly cut in half. How powerful of an attack was needed to accomplish this? Unknowingly, Kai Er's eyes were already filled with coldness. Just like before she lost her memory, the giant death scythe in her hand was like the god of death that had descended to reap lives. The terrifying spiritual pressure caused everyone to feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. No one had expected that Kai who was originally an important target of protection, would unexpectedly erupt at this time. A dazzling golden light barrier also lit up at this time, enveloping everyone inside, and also blocking the splattering snake blood outside. It was precisely Han Yu's holy light barrier. Long Haochen naturally saw this from the sky. His heart immediately surged with a sense of ecstasy. Kai had recovered? However, the next moment, he didn't have the time to think about this anymore. Although the giant snake was cut in half, its attack did not stop. A centipede dies, but it doesn't fall down. Moreover, this giant snake had lived in the gloomy swamp for who knows how many years. Its body was cut in half, and it also suffered from the terrifying killing intent of the death-size corrosive killing intent. This caused enormous damage to its body, but it still couldn't take its life. As long as it could sneak back into the swamp, it still had a chance to recover. And under the effect of the saint's spiritual stove, its current target could only be Long Houchen. Naturally, it hated this human in front of it. It fiercely opened its big mouth, and a dark green ball of light directly bombarded towards Long Houchen. As soon as this ball of light came out, Long Houchen felt an intense crisis. The glorious holy shield in his left hand immediately moved. Holy shield technique, shield wall, these two great defensive techniques were released at the same time. Moreover, in the split second before the ball of light arrived, he placed the glorious holy shield horizontally in front of his chest. His body froze, and he used divine defense to block. Never forget, Long Houchen still had Yiting. With a flash of white light, Yiting arrived behind Long Houchen. A series of light stars suddenly flew out from her staff, and in a flash, it condensed into a spear, and took the lead to collide with that dark green ball of light. Star Glory's spear. Before releasing the saint's spiritual stove, Yiting had already started chanting this incantation. She used the saint's spiritual stove's pulling ability to arrive at Long Houchen's side, and then immediately threw the Star Glory spear. Amidst the loud explosion, that dark green ball of light stopped in the air. Countless golden light stars scattered in all directions, and the Star Glory spear was actually directly smashed into pieces. However, that giant serpent wasn't any better off. Its falling body once again issued a miserable hiss. Bang! The outer layer of protection, holy shield technique, and shield wall were shattered one after another, and finally bombarded the glorious holy shield. Long Houchen only felt a strange force violently surging towards him. Even with his current cultivation and though a divine defense, to block this divine technique of the Guardian Knight, he was unexpectedly sent flying by the impact. His chest felt stuffy, and the surface of the glorious holy shield in his hand actually caved in greatly. Cracks even appeared at the core. Such a glorious great equipment was already heavily damaged. Although it could still be repaired, it was already beyond the self-healing array on the shield. He needed to find a master alchemist to repair it. After that dark green ball of light blasted Long Houchen away, it directly flew towards the giant serpent's wide-open mouth. It was as if it had a life of its own. However, at this time, the giant serpent's fighting strength also plummeted along with its body being severed. The two holy guards moved at the same time. A fiery red figure suddenly leaped up, and a pair of spiritual wings condensed from flames instantly accelerated him. Holy Guard number 12 appeared above the giant serpent's mouth in a flash. Immediately, the bone blade in his hand once again burst forth with the light of Azura. This time it was the Azura stab. It directly touched that dark green light. The coordination between Holy Guard number 11 and Holy Guard number 12 was extremely good. A huge ice ball covered in spikes drew a nearly perfect parabola, accurately landing in the giant serpent's mouth. Naturally, the others were not idle. In this short period of time, Wang Yuan had already installed the other two empty silver crystals on her divine giant soul shield. She could naturally see what the two holy guards wanted to do. They had no intention of letting the giant serpent swallow that dark green ball of light again. Therefore, her air-splitting cannon shot directly towards the giant serpent's gills. Sima Xian and Lin Xian's attacks came directly from behind. The fire spell appeared again, blasting into the giant serpent's body through the broken cross-section. Meanwhile, Sima Xian's vigorous light ball flashed with purple lightning and followed closely behind. One must know that Long Houchen and his companions' true strength had already reached the realm of king-tier monster hunters. Under the joint attack, other than Han Yu and Chen Ying, who did not make a move, the others attacked with all their might. One could imagine how powerful the attack was. Most importantly, their cooperation was extremely tacit. This meant that their overall strength was no longer 1 + 1 = 2, but more than 2. The 12th Holy Guard's azure thorn collided with the dark green ball of light. Immediately, the light ball, which had already dimmed a lot, was blasted more than 10 meters away. However, he was also sent flying by the huge rebound force. It took him a lot of effort to stabilize himself. However, the 11th Holy Guard's huge ice ball had already fallen into the giant serpent's mouth. One could imagine what it would feel like when a living creature opened its mouth wide and suddenly swallowed a big ice ball covered with spikes. At this moment, Wang Yuanyuan's air-splitting cannon, Lin Xian, and Sima Xian's attacks from behind all landed on the giant serpent's body. The giant serpent's body was blasted away by the air-splitting cannon. Naturally, it could no longer swallow that dark green ball of light. Another 3-meter-long section of its body was smashed apart amidst the violent rumbling behind it. It was charred black. Its huge body twitched and finally smashed into the swamp. Unfortunately, it was not the moist and soft swamp mud, but the cold and hard frozen ground. After the 11th Holy Guard completed the ice ball, the next spell was cast on the ground. 1,000 miles of ice was a powerful level 7 spell. It froze the swamp within a radius of 1,000 square meters into hard frozen ground. Moreover, it was not something that could be melted in a short period of time. After casting this spell, the 11th Holy Guard finally showed signs of fatigue. Chapter 146. Yiting pointed her wand forward, and streaks of silk-like golden rays floated out and entangled the dark green ball of light that was struck away by the 12th Holy Guard, binding it within. However, the dark green ball of light struggled with great force, and it almost broke free from the entanglement of the golden threads on several occasions. In order to completely bind it, Long Haochen raised his hand and pressed it on Yiting's back. He used his own spiritual power to strengthen Yiting, and only then did he manage to imprison the dark green ball of light. The following process was simple. Unable to escape into the swamp, and with the dark green ball of light snatched away from the heavily injured giant serpent, it could only be beaten to death by the group. Kai did not attack again. However, she only held the giant Grim Reaper scythe in her hand, and even her companions did not dare to approach her. No one doubted that the scythe had the ability to cut anything in half. Kai was also a little dazed. She slowly lifted her head to look at Long Haochen in the sky. If Long Haochen could carefully observe her gaze, he would realize that deep in Kai-er's eyes, something that was originally very guarded was quietly melting away. Images could be faked, but reality could not be faked. If it wasn't for Long Haochen's collision, she would have been the one to suffer the giant serpent's direct attack. But when Long Haochen knocked her away, he didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation, and didn't even have a resolute expression. Kai-er's power of observation was also very strong. Now that she was also a god's chosen, she clearly saw that in the instant when Long Haochen knocked her away and was brought into the air by the giant serpent, his first action was to look back at her. His expression was very calm, as if he had just done something that couldn't be more normal. When he saw that he was not affected by the giant serpent, a look of relief appeared in his eyes. If it wasn't for the blessed's constitution, Kai would not have been able to see all this clearly. However, when she really saw all this clearly, some of the barriers in her heart began to melt away. As for what Long Haochen said before, he believed it a little more. It had to be said that the giant snake's vitality was very tenacious. After being beaten up by everyone for about a quarter of an hour, it completely lost its life. There didn't seem to be any fatal points on its body. By the time it died, it had already been dismembered. Long Haochen and Yiting had already landed on the ground. He looked at Kai-er in surprise. Kai-er was willing to help. This was already a good development. Long Haochen gave Kai-er a thumbs up and walked towards the giant snake. "Do any of you recognize this magical beast?" Long Houchen asked his companions. Everyone was at a loss. This was the first time they had seen such a huge snake-type magical beast. Wang Yuanyuan muttered, "This should be a magical beast of the 9th rank. They are equivalent to our human 8th step professions. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so difficult to deal with. However, it doesn't seem to have many skills. Apart from spitting out that ball of light, the only other thing it has is a strong body. From the looks of it, it seems that its main attack method is to use its body to attack. Fortunately, it met us." Han Yu frowned. "It's so difficult for us to deal with it. No wonder this place is called the Death Domain. If we encounter a lone traveler, I'm afraid they will be swallowed in one bite. But we don't know what kind of magical beast it is. It's called a forest boa. It's the largest snake-type magical beast on the continent. The most powerful forest boa king is a 10th level magical beast. They have a strong body and like to live in swamps. They are not poisonous, but they are very aggressive. They are good at swallowing their enemies. That dark green ball of light should be the magic core of its inner core." The one who spoke was Holy Guard number 12. His voice was strong and forceful, with a bit of metallic clang. However, it only briefly introduced the situation of the anacondas, and then kept quiet. Long Houchen looked at the inner core in Yiting's hand. It was a green crystal the size of a fist, but it seemed to be very soft. A green light was faintly discernible inside. "Holy Guard number 12, what's the use of this inner core?" Long Houchen asked. Holy Guard number 12 replied respectfully, "Master, the forest boa's inner core can improve a human's physique and greatly enhance external spiritual power. It's a rare good thing. With this inner core, the swamp gas here shouldn't be able to corrode us anymore. Also, the forest boa's gallbladder is also a great tonic and can greatly enhance external spiritual power. It's best to take it together with the inner core. This way, it will greatly benefit the body." "I think I've seen this recipe in an ancient book," Lin Xian suddenly said, his eyes instantly becoming excited. "That's right, I remember now. It's the forest boa. By mixing its inner core with the snake gallbladder, adding the 9-petal black chrysanthemum, the 3-leaf ice immortal fruit, and a dozen other herbs, it can be refined into the forest boa body forging pill. It can strengthen one's foundation, eliminate impurities in the body, increase one's lifespan, and enhance external spiritual power. Compared to the previous ones, from a potioneering master's point of view, I feel that the effect of increasing external spiritual power is secondary." Everyone was smart, and Lin Xian's simple description immediately made them understand many things. No matter what profession, the body will be nourished by spiritual power during the continuous cultivation process. However, everyone's body condition is different. Spiritual power can only nourish the body, but not completely nourish it. As one's cultivation increases, the body's toughness will increase, but at the same time, some impurities will form in the body. Only after one's cultivation breaks through to the 9th stage will the spiritual power return to the body and gradually refine these impurities. Therefore, the lifespan of a 9th stage powerhouse far exceeds that of an ordinary person. If this forest boa body forging pill can effectively eliminate the impurities in the body and strengthen one's foundation, then, without a doubt, it will definitely greatly increase the user's cultivation potential. This was obviously much more effective than directly increasing the external spiritual power. Therefore, after hearing Lin Xian's words, everyone's eyes revealed surprise. Han Yu said, "Since this pill has such an effect, why haven't we heard of it before?" Lin Xian shrugged and said, "Because the forest boa, this kind of magical beast, should have long been extinct in the ancient records. Even the refining method of the forest boa body forging pill, I only read it in a precious ancient book. What's strange about you not hearing of it?" Long Houchen said, "Do you still remember the specific method of taking this forest boa body forging pill and the amount needed to achieve the effect?" Lin Xian thought about it and said, Basically, an ordinary forest boa's nidin and gallbladder can be refined into 8 to 12 forest boa body forging pills. And to achieve the effect of eliminating all the impurities in the body, then at least 8 must be taken, gradually refining the medicinal effect. This pill isn't too difficult to refine, the key is that the materials are hard to find. Our luck this time is really not bad. Of course, if we can kill a forest boa king, then it's different. Only 2 forest boa body forging pills, refined from the forest boa king's nidin and gallbladder, are enough for one person to use. And the number of pills that can be refined from its nidin and gallbladder is also much more than ordinary forest boa. After the forest boa body forging pill completely cleanses the body of impurities and consolidates the foundation, it is equivalent to a guaranteed promotion to the 8th step and above. Breaking through the 9th step bottleneck will also be much easier than ordinary professionals. Chen Ying rolled her eyes at him. Do you have a fever, brother? The forest boa king is a 10th level magical beast, equivalent to us 9th step powerhouses. An ordinary forest boa is already so difficult to deal with, not to mention the forest boa king. You better pray that we don't run into it. Lin Xian shrugged and said, I'm just saying casually. Long Haochen said, Lin Xian, you are in charge of keeping it safe. Let's continue forward and see if we can encounter more forest anacondas. But everyone, be careful. These forest anacondas are very good at hiding their presence in the swamp. I need to be within 3 meters of them to discover their presence. The harvest brought by the forest boas undoubtedly boosted everyone's spirit. If they could hunt enough forest boas, even if they couldn't complete the mission this time, it would be worth it. As the saying goes, the greater the danger, the greater the opportunity. Wasn't this the dark swamp known as the domain of death? Long Haochen didn't immediately lead everyone forward, but stopped to rest on the frozen ground. Lin Xian put the forest boa's gallbladder into a silk bag that emitted a gentle spiritual fluctuation, and the forest boa king's nidin was put into something similar to a net and hung in front of his chest. With the help of the nidin, the surrounding poisonous gas would naturally drift away and not approach them. This was the natural ability of the forest boas, but it benefited them. However, the effect of one forest boa king's nidin was still limited. It could only disperse the poisonous gas within a radius of about 30 meters, which was not as good as the 11th Holy Guard's ice mist. The reason why Long Haochen gave the order to rest was mainly to let the 11th Holy Guard recover his spiritual energy. In the previous operation, it could be said that the 11th Holy Guard played a crucial role. Without him, they might not have been able to kill this forest boa. Moreover, in this swamp, the 11th Holy Guard's role had obviously increased a lot. After resting for about half an hour, the group continued on their journey. With the forest boa king's nidin dispersing the poisonous gas, the 11th Holy Guard's spiritual energy was naturally saved. He only needed to solidify the ground under his feet. Han Yu also summoned his mount companion, the Evil Eye Commander. This fellow was a rare spiritual type magical beast, and its perception was also extremely strong. Moreover, as it evolved, it gained a new ability, which was the enhancement of its spiritual perception. After directly using this magic on Long Haochen's originally extremely strong perception was almost doubled. The deeper they went into the swamp, the more rugged the path became. The swamp lizards that they had previously encountered appeared a few more times. These kinds of magical beasts, which were generally level 4 or 5, were not much of a threat to the group. However, the group's speed continued to decrease. Because there were more and more plants in the swamp, Long Haochen had to use Ripple of Light continuously. Relatively speaking, Ripple of Light was much more cost-effective than the aria of the Goddess of Light. Although the aria of the Goddess of Light was powerful, it also consumed a lot of spiritual energy. If it was used to cut the vines and open a path, it would be like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. After moving forward for another 15 minutes or so, the number of plants in front of them suddenly became sparse. As they continued forward, the swamp even became empty. Long Houchen stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. The situation in front of him was clearly abnormal. He had been to Fantasy Paradise, and although he did not know much about nature, he understood that plants were alive. Plants that could survive in this swamp had obviously adapted to the environment here. Under the situation where the swamp beneath their feet and the poisonous fog in the air did not change, the originally dense swamp plants suddenly became fewer. This could only mean one thing: there was something in this empty land that could threaten the growth of these plants. Seeing that Long Houchen had stopped in his tracks, the others immediately gathered in a tighter formation and focused their attention on the outside. Kai moved closer to Long Houchen with some curiosity. "Why did you stop?" Long Houchen looked at her with some surprise. These days, as long as he did not take the initiative to speak to her, she usually did not take the initiative to speak. At this moment, when he and Kai looked at each other, he was surprised to find that Kai's gaze had become much gentler. Long Houchen knew her too well. He could even feel the slightest change. He thought to himself, could it be that there are signs of her memory recovering because of the attack I launched earlier? He did not expect that Kai's change was not because of the recovery of her memory, but because he had unintentionally revealed his concern and protection. There's something wrong with the situation. The environment here has changed too much. There should be something that can threaten the swamp plants. While talking with Kai, Long Houchen also spread his perception as much as possible to feel the places where his vision could not see. There seems to be plants in front. Everyone, be careful and be vigilant. As he spoke, Long Houchen put away the brilliant holy shield and transferred the ripple of light to his left hand. Golden light shone on his right hand, and the aria of the goddess of light was released. The sacred shield of light was heavily damaged when dealing with the forest boa's inner core, so it was naturally not as effective as using the dual swords to transform into the punishment knight. They continued forward for about 100 meters. Just as Long Houchen had sensed, plants began to appear in front of them. However, they were completely different from the plants they had encountered before. There were no vines, but rather huge flowers. These flowers grew very strangely. The distance between each plant was at least 5 meters, so they seemed very sparse. The large leaves were slightly curled, and the roots that were about 5 meters tall extended all the way up. They were at least a foot thick. The most peculiar thing was at the top of them. It was a huge flower bud, and the thickest part would probably require 2 people to wrap their arms around it. The flower bud was tightly shut. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single flower that was in full bloom. Their huge bodies swayed slightly in the poisonous marsh gas. When they arrived here, everyone had the same feeling, which was silence. Yes, it was really too quiet here. There was not a single sound. There were only these huge flower buds among the plants. Even if their bodies swayed slightly, there was not a single sound. They did not encounter any attacks from demonic beasts during their journey. When a place was too quiet, it would give off a feeling of deathly stillness. At this moment, that was what Long Houchen and the rest felt. You guys stay here. Han Yu, take over my position. I'll go forward and take a look, Long Houchen said in a deep voice. Faced with such a strange situation, he decided to go and take a look first. There was definitely something wrong with these big flowers. It was just that they had not shown it yet. The 4 spiritual wings on his back spread out quietly, and the gentle sacred fire began to rise on the surface of Long Houchen's body. At this moment, he could not help but think of Bai Xiaoma during the Monster Hunters competition. Plants were not necessarily safe. Back then, Bai Xiaoma relied on plants to make Yang Wenjiao suffer a great loss. After taking a step forward, Long Houchen was already 10 meters away. His gaze instantly became sharp. At this moment, he was already 20 meters away from the big flowers, and an instinctive sense of danger arose in him. However, he did not stop. Instead, he sped up and went straight to the big flower at the front. Just as he was about 5 meters away from the big flower, something strange happened. The big flower closest to Long Houchen suddenly swayed. Immediately after, its thick roots suddenly extended downwards, and the huge flower bud smashed straight at Long Houchen. Accompanied by a strange roar, the huge flower bud suddenly opened up in 3 pieces, and it was like a huge hare's lip, biting towards Long Houchen. After the flower bud opened up, it was so huge that it could easily swallow Long Houchen whole. Moreover, when the flower bud opened up, it revealed its ferocious appearance. The 3 huge petals were blood-red in color, and they were full of sharp teeth with barbs. These sharp teeth were sharp and slightly curved at the front, and the parts connected to the petals at the back were much thicker. They were like sharp hooks. Without a doubt, once one was bitten by such a terrifying mouth, it would not be easy to break free. What was even more chilling was that after the big flower opened up, a ferocious ghost face was revealed in the middle. The strange roar came from this scary ghost face. Long Houchen was already prepared to react. The moment the flower came crashing down on him, his body had already moved. Amidst the dragon's roar, the 2 swords danced, and his entire body soared into the sky at an astonishing speed. It was the rising dragon strike. The dazzling golden light covered Long Houchen's body, and he was like a golden dragon soaring into the sky. Amidst the dense light spiritual power, he collided with the big flower fiercely. Dark red juice splattered in all directions, and Long Houchen drew a parabola in the air with a golden light, falling towards his companions behind him. At the same time he collided with this terrifying big flower, the surrounding big flowers also suddenly bit towards him. Their thick roots actually extended in an instant, and for a moment, the air was filled with shrill roars. These big flowers were quite powerful, and it could be seen that they were not afraid of the holy fire on Long Houchen's body at all. The big flower that was the first to collide with Long Houchen's rising dragon strike only had a petal crushed, and it was not completely destroyed. When Long Houchen's rising dragon strike collided with the sharp teeth on the petals, there was a strong clang, and there were even sparks. The only petal that was destroyed was the effect of the powerful attack power of the aria of the Goddess of Light. Flapping his spiritual wings, Long Houchen's speed increased sharply as he flew backwards, and he dodged the attacks of the big flowers. Only then did he return to his companions. The length of the big flower's roots was limited, and they could not catch Long Houchen, but they continued to roar angrily in his direction. All the big flowers began to sway violently, and a pink mist began to spread from them. It floated towards Long Houchen and the others. "Be careful," Long Houchen shouted in a low voice. Without needing his command, a layer of holy light barrier had already been released. At the same time, the 11th Holy Guard also released the cold air that could condense the water in the mist. However, what was surprising was that the pink mist was not affected by the cold air at all, and continued to float towards them. Soon, it adhered to the holy light barrier. Amidst a series of concentrated popping sounds, the holy light barrier lasted for less than 3 seconds before it turned into golden light and disappeared. Everything happened so quickly that when Long Houchen quickly put up another holy light barrier, a trace of pink mist still floated in. Long Houchen's holy light barrier was different from Han Yu's, after all. His spiritual energy was much purer than Han Yu's, so his endurance was slightly higher. Lin Xian's flame of the heart shot out rapidly from his hand, sweeping towards the pink mist. However, the strange thing was that the pink mist was not even afraid of the high temperature of the flame of the heart. Under the impact of the flames, it quickly dispersed and flew to the side. "Hold your breath," Long Houchen shouted at Chen Ying'er, because the mist was floating in her direction. Chen Ying'er's reaction was already very fast, but she still inhaled a small trace of the pink mist. The thick sweet smell caused Chen Ying'er to be stunned, and her expression quickly stiffened. Long Houchen had already released another layer of holy light barrier to resist the terrifying pink mist's corrosion. He looked anxiously at Chen Ying'er. Chen Inger stared blankly in front of her, then slowly walked towards the direction of those terrifying flowers. Her mind seemed to have completely lost its clarity. Wang Yuan hurriedly pulled her back, and Lin Xian's reaction was also very fast. He quickly took out a bottle of blue liquid, drank it, and then sprayed it on Chen Inger's face. Chen Inger shivered, and only then did she wake up. What happened to me just now? Looking at the confused Chen Inger, everyone could not help but be shocked. Although Chen Inger's combat strength was not that strong, she was still a Type 6 powerhouse. As a Type 6 summoner, she was actually controlled by such a small trace of the pink mist. It could be seen how powerful it was. No wonder not even a blade of grass grew in this area. Let's retreat, Long Haochen said decisively. The pink mist was already something they could not deal with at the moment. They did not know how many of these flowers were hidden in the swamp, and how long the mist would last. Although his spiritual energy was enough to maintain the holy light barrier for a long time. But if he were to launch an attack, it would be hard to guarantee that the mist would not leak in. He naturally could not take the risk, and decided to retreat from the range of the flowers first. At this time, suddenly, Long Haochen's heart skipped a beat, and an urgent voice rang out in his mind. Wait a minute. Long Haochen called out to his companions who were preparing to retreat. His eyes flashed purple, and the 9 patterns of purple runes appeared on his forehead once again. At the same time, he expanded the range of his holy light barrier by a lot. Long Haochen's holy light barrier could at least last 10 seconds in this poisonous mist, and from this, the gap in spiritual energy could be seen. A huge figure appeared in front of everyone in a flash of purple. It was Haoyue. The moment Haoyue appeared, the 4 heads roared at the sky. No, it should not be called roaring, but cheering. Long Haochen did not even have time to stop it, and it had already rushed out of the holy light barrier. The 4 heads raised up high and opened their mouths to suck in the pink mist. At this moment, Haoyue was like a whale sucking in water, and Greenie did not forget to cast a levitation spell on itself, so that its huge body would not sink into the swamp. The 4 heads opened their mouths as wide as they could, greedily sucking in the pink mist in the air. Long Haochen and the others were behind Haoyue, and with Haoyue's powerful suction, the mist on their side was naturally thinner. What is Haoyue doing? Everyone stared blankly at Haoyue, who was constantly sucking in the poisonous mist, unable to understand. Long Haochen smiled bitterly. I don't know, it is willing. It seems that this poisonous mist is very beneficial to it. Lin Xian, do you remember the stone ball we bought at the auction? That time, Haoyue was just as impatient as it is now, and then it began to evolve. It seems that this poisonous mist is very beneficial to it. Lin Xian said, I have never seen such a strange magical beast as Haoyue. Boss, why do I feel that Haoyue's strength is no weaker than yours? Long Haochen said, very likely. Even I don't know where Haoyue's limit is. Let's wait and see. Haoyue will not do anything he is not confident in. Previously, when they were besieged by demon hunters, Haoyue displayed great strength, and even a bow was stopped by it for a long time. It could be said that without Haoyue's help, Long Haochen would not have been able to protect Kai Er and complete the absorption of the Grim Reaper's inheritance. Kai Er's situation would have been even worse than now. At that time, Long Haochen also saw Haoyue's current strength. Not to mention, just that 4 attribute chaos elemental stripping that enveloped the entire city was incomparably amazing. Moreover, since the last time everyone went into seclusion in the holy city, Haoyue had been quietly cultivating. The protrusion on its neck was already as long as the other heads. Without a doubt, it was very likely that it would grow its 5th head. By that time, what level of magical beast would Haoyue be? Long Haochen did not know either, but in his heart, he had some vague guesses about Haoyue. His good partner was not simple at all. Haoyue's devouring speed was increasing, and its huge body that was more than 10 meters long was even slightly raised. It could be clearly seen that the scales on Haoyue's body were gradually covered with a layer of pink luster, and its body began to slightly expand. Dense spiritual power waves constantly spread from its body, and the color of the eyes on its four heads had changed from their respective attributes to the same purple color. Long Haochen and Haoyue were connected by a blood contract, so he could feel it most clearly. He could clearly feel that at this moment, Haoyue seemed to be crazily absorbing a kind of energy, so much so that his own spiritual power began to increase rapidly. In just a short while, his spiritual power had increased by as much as 50 points. Long Haochen and Haoyue were closely related, and if either of them had a breakthrough, it would have a considerable impact on the other. Previously, when Long Haochen rescued Kair and broke through to the 7th stage, he felt that Haoyue was about to break through. However, this breakthrough had been suppressed by Haoyue. Long Haochen knew very well that this was all because of him. Kair had lost her memory, so how could he care about other things? And Haoyue's evolution was very likely to return to its original world, and it needed his protection. Haoyue was afraid that he would be distracted, so it did not complete its evolution. Recently, I have indeed neglected this good partner. Looking at Haoyue guiltily, Long Haochen secretly told himself that no matter what Haoyue's background was, or what it would become in the future, it would always be his brother. Just like how it had always been protecting him, no matter what, he would also protect it. The pink mist in the air began to gradually fade under Haoyue's all-out devouring. Haoyue's four large heads continuously let out roars, filled with excitement. The speed of its devouring continued to increase, and its stomach also began to bulge. The pink color on its body also became more and more intense. Master, this is a devil cannibal flower. An extremely terrifying plant-type magical beast. Each devil cannibal flower was equivalent to an ordinary 6th stage magical beast. They liked to live in groups, and whether it was plants, animals, or humans, they were all their food. The most domineering thing about the devil cannibal flower is this poisonous mist, called the bewildering poison mist. No matter how strong a fighter was, once confused by the poisonous mist, they would walk into the devil cannibal flower and be devoured. Back in our era, there was an operation against the devil cannibal flower to completely exterminate it. I didn't expect it to still exist today. I only recognized it when I saw the pink mist. The one who spoke was 12 Holy Guard. Without a doubt, these 2 Holy Guards with the souls of powerhouses were experienced and knowledgeable. This time, entering the dark swamp, they were even more useful than anyone in the Commander tier Monster Hunt 64. Long Haochen nodded at the 12th Holy Guard. He had an idea. Since the Holy Guards were so helpful, why not, thinking of this, he made up his mind. It seemed that as long as he could find the snake demon god Andamari, he and his companions might really be able to kill it here. The bewildering poison mist in the air was getting thinner and thinner. The holy light barrier released by Long Haochen no longer needed to be replenished, and it wouldn't be destroyed by the remaining poison mist. At this moment, Haoyue looked like he had put on heavy makeup. His entire body was bright pink, and his abdomen was bulging. Strong spiritual energy waves kept erupting from his body, and the roars of his 4 heads became louder and louder. The devil cannibal flowers in the distance could be seen clearly again. Everyone was surprised to find that these devil cannibal flowers were much more dispirited than before. It was obvious that continuously releasing the bewildering poison mist took a lot out of them. Roar! Haoyue's 4 heads roared at the sky. His pink body that had swelled up a lot boldly strode forward. Green light surrounded his body. With the support of the levitation spell, he didn't have to worry about being trapped in the swamp. He charged straight at the devil cannibal flowers. Haoyue, be careful! Long Haochen shouted. Haoyue immediately sent him a reassuring message. His thick and powerful limbs sped up. On his body, the purple light that Long Haochen had seen many times before rippled once again. However, this time, the purple light was much stronger than before. The purple light didn't go far, and only floated around Haoyue's body. However, as he brazenly charged into the devil cannibal flowers, the effects of the purple light became apparent. The devil cannibal flowers seemed to be very afraid of Haoyue. They didn't dare to open their flower buds to attack him, and allowed Haoyue to ram into them. When the purple light released by Haoyue came into contact with the devil cannibal flowers, the huge devil cannibal flowers quickly withered. Whether it was its roots or flower buds, they all withered and fell to the ground. Haoyue extended one of his heads, opened his mouth, and inhaled. There seemed to be a small ball of pink liquid being sucked into his stomach. Then, he walked towards the second devil cannibal flower. He repeated the previous process. The devil cannibal flowers that Long Haochen was so afraid of were like ice meeting charcoal in front of Haoyue. They couldn't resist at all. In just a short while, all the devil cannibal flowers in their line of sight had withered and disappeared into the swamp. "Come, let's follow him," Long Haochen shouted. The group moved again, and advanced forward behind Haoyue. The actual number of devil cannibal flowers wasn't as many as Long Haochen had guessed. There were about 300 to 400 of them. However, because of their huge size, the area they occupied was not small. Long Haochen realized that if they walked a little further, they should be able to avoid these devil cannibal flowers. They didn't have to pass through their territory. Without a doubt, if Haoyue hadn't appeared in time, it would have been very, very difficult for them to pass through. The devil cannibal flowers' mind confusion fog was too terrifying. Haoyue moved faster and faster. It could be seen that every time he destroyed a devil cannibal flower, the pink color on his body became dimmer. When the last devil cannibal flower became his food, the color of his body returned to normal. However, at this moment, Haoyue quickly returned to Long Haochen, as if he was asking for help. His four heads were trembling slightly, and he let out a low grunt at Long Haochen. "Okay." Long Haochen nodded at Haoyue. Then, he immediately turned to his companions and said, "You guys wait here. We'll be back soon." The next moment, the purple light lit up impatiently. Long Haochen and Haoyue disappeared almost instantly. Chapter 147. Kai was at Long Haochen's side before, and seeing him suddenly disappear into thin air, she was immediately startled, her face clearly showing a panicked expression. Wang Yuanyuan hurried to her side and whispered, "It's all right. Leader must have gone to help Haoyue evolve. Let's just wait here." Since Long Haochen did not ask them to help Haoyue evolve, it was clear that he was confident. Hence, Wang Yuanyuan did not tell Kai about the dangers Long Haochen might face if he helped Haoyue. That's right, Long Haochen was confident, because before he was teleported away, Haoyue had clearly told him through telepathy that this evolution process would be very short. After a year of secluded cultivation, coupled with the large amount of devil piranha flower essence and mind confusion poison, Haoyue's accumulated power was too great. Compared to the previous breakthroughs, it was much more urgent, but it would also be much smoother. With a flash of light, Long Haochen and Haoyue appeared on top of a rocky hill. Black and red, as well as the thick, turbid air, once again appeared in Long Haochen's senses. Holding his swords horizontally, Long Haochen did not hesitate to put on a defensive stance. At the same time, he focused all his attention on Haoyue. Unlike the previous breakthroughs, when Haoyue tried to suppress his aura, the moment he returned to his original world, he immediately raised his four heads and roared at the sky. It was a roar filled with the majesty of a king's return. It seemed to indicate that as the king of a generation, he had the power to control everything. Poof! The protrusion on the side of Haoyue's neck suddenly exploded, and a brand new head popped out. From the moment he teleported to the moment his head grew out, only 3 breaths of time had passed. This speed of breakthrough showed how urgent Haoyue was for his evolution. This new head was about the same size as the other 4. The biggest difference was the feet on top of the head. Its horn was very strange, like a chrysanthemum blossoming on its head. And in the center of this chrysanthemum, there was an ancient character that was rarely seen on the holy demon continent. Pass. This big head's eyes were dark purple, which was obviously different from the purple that Haoyue's entire body had released. When Haoyue's entire body and all of his eyes changed color, he released a bright purple color. The purplish hue in this big head's eyes was much darker. The big head with the chrysanthemum horn swung its head with all its might and roared with a hoarse voice along with the other four big heads. An extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Haoyue's body. Even Long Haochen, his blood-pact partner, could not help but take a step back under the pressure of this powerful aura. In his heart, he was even more shocked. He could clearly feel that Haoyue's current strength had clearly surpassed his own. The aura of a magical beast of the 8th rank was equivalent to that of a powerhouse of the 7th rank. Furthermore, it must not be forgotten that Haoyue was a magical beast of the 8th rank with 5 different attributes. With the aura that he was releasing, even a magical beast of the 9th rank might not be able to defeat him. The eyes of Haoyue's 5 heads were all different colors, but without exception, at this moment, their eyes all became fierce. Furthermore, with the growth of the 5th head, its body also began to change. Its body that was more than 10 meters long once again began to expand. The scales on its body became thicker, and its bones became thicker. The size of each head began to increase along with its body, and its neck became thicker. Just as Long Haochen was watching the changes on Haoyue's body in shock, suddenly, another shocking scene occurred. Pooh! Like the sound of silk being torn, the 2 huge protrusions on Haoyue's back suddenly split open, bringing with it a large amount of dark purple blood. 2 huge wings that were 3 meters wide and over 6 meters long unfurled from its back, just like that. Haoyue's wings did not have any feathers, and looked a bit like a bat's, but it was even more sturdy than a bat's wings. The periosteum on it was extremely thick, and it was completely dark purple in color. It was just like the color of the 5th head's eyes. The wounds caused by the wings breaking out of its body healed at an astonishing speed. The thick scales also began to grow from the roots of the wings and spread upward. With the appearance of the wings, Haoyue's body finally stopped at 15 meters long, but its overall size was at least twice as large as before. The terrifying and condensed aura gave Long Haochen a feeling that it was somewhat unreal. Was it really only a magical beast of the 8th rank? But, how could a magical beast of the 8th rank have such a domineering aura? Seeing the changes on Haoyue's body, Long Haochen didn't know why, but he felt a sense of panic in his heart. He didn't know where this panic came from, but he was sure that even if he and Yiting joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for Haoyue. It was also at this moment that Long Haochen suddenly felt his body start to heat up. If someone was here, they would be able to see that the 9 purple lines of light on his forehead were glowing brightly. Even his skin had turned purple at this moment. An aura that was exactly the same as Haoyue's was also released from Long Haochen's body. He could clearly feel that his internal and external spiritual power was actually increasing at a rapid speed. The spiritual power that was increasing wasn't of the light attribute, but a special existence that Long Haochen had never experienced before. This spiritual power was extremely pure, but it didn't have any attribute. When it came into contact with his own light attribute spiritual power, it turned into the light attribute. 100, 200, 300, 500, 1000, 2000, 3000. The spiritual power in Long Haochen's body continued to increase by more than 3000 before the rate of increase started to slow down. Moreover, this was only the amount of his internal spiritual power that had increased. Even he himself wasn't sure how much his external spiritual power had increased. He could only feel that his entire body was filled with explosive power. This feeling was really wonderful. Without a doubt, this increase was completely brought about by Haoyue. In the past, it could be said that most of the time during the process of cultivation, it could be said that Long Houchen had given Haoyue more. But now, when Haoyue broke through, it could be said that it had increased his spiritual power by 3,000. It could be said that this could be said to be unprecedented. Moreover, Haoyue, who had wings, undoubtedly had the ability to fly. If Long Houchen was still at the 5th rank, he would have transformed from an Earth Knight to a Sky Knight. Haoyue's huge body slowly turned around, the thick scales all over his body emitting a faint purple light. He slowly raised his 2 front claws, and actually stood up like a human. The huge body and Long Houchen's formed a sharp contrast. His 5 big heads looked up at the sky, and his eyes revealed an indescribable coldness. Looking into the distance, he once again let out a fierce roar. This time, the roar gradually turned into a long howl, as if he wanted to completely vent the depression in his heart. Long Houchen silently felt the changes in Haoyue's emotions. He didn't say anything, and only watched in silence. In the distance, it seemed that some kind of creature had begun to quickly rush over, but in Haoyue's eyes, there was a strong sense of perseverance. His 2 front claws slowly landed, and Haoyue's 5 big heads simultaneously crawled towards Long Houchen. Together with the new big head, they all crawled towards Long Houchen's body. Their eyes at the same time also became gentle, and at the same time, they simultaneously rubbed against Long Houchen's body. Long Houchen heard Haoyue's voice in his heart. "Brother, I have evolved, I have finally entered the completion stage. Haha, those insignificant scum can no longer threaten my survival. One day, when I return to this place, I will definitely crush all of them into powder." Completion stage? Long Houchen doubtfully looked at Haoyue. Haoyue lightly nodded. Little Light lowered his head, and touched Long Houchen's legs. A gentle force immediately lifted Long Houchen's body, and slid along Little Light's slender and thick neck onto Haoyue's back. "Brother, when you first summoned me to your plane, you used your blood to help me leave the infancy stage, and enter the growth stage. And just now, I finally succeeded in breaking through the growth stage, and officially entered the completion stage. After entering the completion stage, my strength can gradually be revealed. In the following period of time, I will gradually perfect myself, and my true strength will also gradually awaken." Long Houchen's heart was startled. Right now, Haoyue had only just entered the completion stage. Then, when it truly broke through the completion stage, how powerful would it be? Haoyue sensed Long Houchen's thoughts, and what it transmitted to Long Houchen was a kind of proud emotion, as if it was proud of its own formidable strength in the future. "Brother, I also can't remember clearly. I also don't know how powerful I will be after truly completing my evolution, when I reach the ultimate form. Only, my body very much yearns for that day to arrive." Long Houchen smiled faintly, and lightly stroked Little Light's neck. "Actually, in my heart, your safety is the most important. As long as you are safe and sound, I don't care how much your strength can increase." Haoyue's 5 large heads all turned around, and 5 pairs of different colored eyes gazed at Long Houchen. Their gentle gazes seemed to melt, and they all gathered in front of Long Houchen, and lightly rubbed against him. That childish affection made Long Houchen's heart uncontrollably warm. That's right, no matter how powerful Haoyue was, it would always be his good companion, his good brother. Stroking their heads one by one, Long Houchen said amiably, "Let's go. Since you have already completed your evolution, let's go back. Lest everyone gets impatient." At this time, he also noticed that a large number of undead creatures had already appeared in the distance, and were rapidly rushing over here. Moreover, there were also several particularly powerful presences that had begun to appear. Haoyue's 5 large heads once again raised, and with a majestic roar, a dense purple light enveloped him and Long Houchen. In the midst of the purple light, 1 man and 1 beast simultaneously disappeared from this world of black and red. This time, Long Houchen clearly felt a little different. In the previous teleportation process, he could feel himself shuttling through space and then arriving at Haoyue's side, but this time was different. He faintly felt that it was as if Haoyue had controlled the power of space, and directly sent them back to their original space. With a flash of light, when the huge figure of Haoyue reappeared in front of everyone in the general class Monster Hunt 64 couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Lin Xian looked at the huge wings spread out on Haoyue's back and couldn't help but say, "Damn, a domineering display. Is this really Haoyue?" Wang Yuanyuan said in shock, "This is the fifth head? Does Haoyue have a limit? Could it be that his head will continue to grow?" Han Yu shook his head, saying, "I don't think so. Look, this time, there are no longer any protrusions on the sides of Haoyue's body. There shouldn't be any more heads growing. However, 5 heads is already very powerful. The aura on its body is at least equivalent to that of a magical beast of the 8th rank." Cherninger thought for a moment, then said, "I'm very curious, what is the attribute of Haoyue's 5th head?" Sima Xian concluded, "Who cares what its attribute is, as long as it's strong, that's enough. Haoyue's strength is the strength of us monster hunters." Haoyue's 5 heads turned around, and with a soft roar, its huge body slowly crouched down. At this moment, everyone noticed that there were signs of ice forming under Haoyue's 4 thick limbs, which was why its huge body didn't have a limit. Long Haochen smiled. "Haoyue is calling for you to come up. Holy Guards 11 and 12, you can temporarily return to the eternal melody. Yiting, you can come back as well." 3 rays of light entered Long Haochen's body at the same time. The completion of Haoyue's evolution boosted Long Haochen's confidence. Furthermore, Haoyue had already sent him a clear message that the dark swamp wasn't much of a threat to it. Since that was the case, it was better to hide some of the strength that was revealed on the surface, so that it could play a more important role at a critical moment. Long Haochen's figure flashed, and he came to Kai Er's side, extending his hand to her. This wasn't the first time Kai Er had seen Haoyue. In the image that Yi Xiaolei showed, Long Haochen and Haoyue were protecting her together, so she naturally knew that Haoyue was Long Haochen's mount. Out of curiosity, she handed her right hand to Long Haochen, and her pretty face was slightly red, which made her look even more pure and beautiful. Long Haochen stared blankly for a moment, and his face couldn't help but turn a little red. However, he felt even more warmth in his heart. Kai Er was willing to let him hold her hand again, so it was clear that her acceptance of him had increased a little. Holding her soft little hand, Long Haochen barely suppressed the surging emotions in his heart, and with the support of his spiritual power, he floated up with her and landed on Haoyue's back again. The others also got on Haoyue's back. With Haoyue's protection, they still maintained a good formation, so that they could react at any time. At this moment, Haoyue's 5th head suddenly turned around and stopped in front of Lin Xian, looking at the forest boa's inner core hanging on his neck, and let out a low roar. Chapter 148. Lin Xian hurriedly covered the orb. "Haoyue, I can't give this to you. I need to go back and refine some pills." The 5th head snorted disdainfully, shook its head at him, and turned back. Long Haochen smiled and said, "Little Z is telling you to put away the forest boa's inner core. With it, the poisonous gas mist here is nothing." Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, but he was a smart man, and immediately understood. "Boss, you mean, the attribute of Haoyue's 5th head is..." Long Haochen nodded slightly. "You guessed right, it's poison." Hearing the word poison, everyone's expression changed. No wonder Haoyue swallowed the thick poisonous mist with all its might. It was to give birth to its 5th head with poison attribute. Poison attribute, it was the first time they heard of it. Among the known magical beasts, there didn't seem to be such an attribute. Of course, plant magical beasts like the devil cannibal flower were an exception. Haoyue's 5th head raised slightly, and with a low growl, its eyes began to light up, shining with a bright purple splendor. Strangely, as its eyes lit up, The surrounding poisonous mist suddenly seemed to have encountered something terrifying, and in the blink of an eye, the poisonous mist within a radius of at least 300 meters had instantly dispersed, and as Haoyue moved forward, the poisonous mist continued to disperse. This was much more effective than the 11th Holy Guard or the forest boa's orb. The sudden widening of their field of vision also made everyone feel better about the dark swamp's environment of death. The color of the swamp actually varied greatly, with some areas being brownish-black, some dark yellow, and some light green. At this time, with the widening of their field of vision, everyone could see a lot more things. Within the range of the devil cannibal flower's growth, there was only one type of plant, and beyond this range, other plants began to appear. It was still mainly made of vines, and there were some other plants that they didn't recognize. The Haoyue's 4 hooves were flying as it strode into the depths of the dark swamp. It seemed to have no scruples at all, as it did not pay attention to its surroundings at all. Strangely enough, ever since everyone got on its back, the magical beasts that dared to attack them had completely disappeared. Don't you guys think it's weird? Where did those swamp monitor lizards go? Chen-Ing looked around curiously. She didn't have to walk by herself and was much safer, which made her feel much better. The depression he felt from being bewitched by the poisonous fog had also disappeared a lot. Lin Xian chuckled and said, "Don't you understand? When a lizard meets its lizard ancestor, how can it not run?" Roar! Little Light suddenly turned around and glared fiercely at Lin Xian. Lin Xian was startled by the ferocious gleam in its eyes. "Boss, what is Haoyue doing?" Long Haochen chuckled and said, Haoyue said, "It's not a lizard, and told you not to compare it with those lowly reptiles, or else it will throw you down." Lin Xian chuckled and said, Good, we Haoyue are the strongest. What lizard, even giant dragons can't compare. Right?" Flattery didn't cost money, and he had never been stingy. At least he wouldn't be stingy in this aspect. Haoyue snorted and no longer paid attention to him. Perhaps it was because Haoyue's 5th head, Little Purple, was just born, so it put in extra effort and completed the task of opening the path by itself. Little Purple's method of opening the path was very simple. It opened its mouth and breathed out some breath in front of it. Its breath was the same color as its eyes, dark purple. Wherever its breath passed, no matter how thick the vines were, they would immediately melt. Naturally, there was no obstruction along the way. However, Long Haochen noticed that Little Purple was constantly breathing deeply. Every time it breathed, it seemed to be absorbing some of the air in the swamp. And as it breathed in and out, the poisonous mist in the distance was also dispersing more and more violently. Although Long Haochen couldn't be sure how Little Purple's strength compared to the other heads, but if this poison attribute was used well, perhaps it would be more terrifying than any other attribute. In just the time it took to eat a meal, the distance Haoyue had advanced was already further than Long Haochen and the rest combined, and had also gone deeper into the swamp. Everyone had also recovered very well. Haoyue's broad back was more than 10 meters long, and although there were 7 people sitting, it didn't seem crowded at all. It was just that for safety's sake, Long Haochen had been protecting Kai by his side, so the two of them were relatively close. Continuing forward, Haoyue ran for about another hour or so, and they had already entered the depths of the swamp. Haoyue's strong aura made the journey much smoother. If it was before, they might not have been able to reach here even if they spent 3 times the time. After passing through a dense patch of vines, a small lake appeared in front of them. The lake was not deep, and in this muddy place everywhere, it was actually so clear that the bottom could be seen. For the first time Haoyue, who had been moving forward aggressively, stopped for the first time. Its 5 heads looked around and for the first time, there was a sense of hesitation in its eyes. Long Haochen could feel the fear in Haoyue's heart at this time, and in his perception, there was a vague sense of unease. His heart trembled and Long Haochen shouted, "Everyone, prepare for battle. Pay attention to the surroundings." At this moment, Kai suddenly looked in a certain direction subconsciously. Long Houchen felt her body suddenly tense up, and immediately looked in a certain direction. A cold light flashed and disappeared in that instant. The speed of this cold light was too fast, and it seemed to have leaped out close to the surface of the lake. In that instant, the speed of the flash was even faster than a sharp blade. Haoyue suddenly let out a low growl, and its huge body tilted slightly to the side. Long Houchen could feel the pain in Haoyue's low growl, and he immediately jumped down from Haoyue's back. At the same time, a golden figure separated from his body and stayed on Haoyue's back. On Haoyue's thick and sturdy right foreleg, there was actually an additional wound that was rolled up. It could be seen that the scales that were half a foot thick had been cut in half, and the nerves inside were vaguely exposed. However, the wound was also healing at an astonishing speed. Although Long Houchen couldn't test the strength of Haoyue's scales with an attack, he had fought with Haoyue many times, and he had a good understanding of Haoyue's own defense. With the strength of Haoyue's external spiritual power, even before it evolved, it was probably in the tens of thousands. It was even possible for it to double after evolution. Under such circumstances, its defense was instantly cut open by the enemy, and it didn't even have time to dodge or react. How powerful was its attack to achieve this? Right at this moment, Long Houchen's pupils suddenly constricted because he noticed to his astonishment that there were a few tens or almost 100 strands of cold light silently rising up from the clear little lake. All of them were shooting towards Haoyue like bolts of lightning, and their speed was so swift that it was utterly impossible to see with the naked eye. "Haoyue!" Long Houchen shouted almost crazily, and at the same time, he brazenly swung the aria of the goddess of light forward, and thousands of golden lights turned into countless light spots that scattered in the air. For this attack, Long Houchen had used all his strength. Not only did he release all his spiritual power, but he also increased his attack speed and coverage to the extreme. It was the demon destruction flash. Haoyue roared, and the two huge wings on its back suddenly spread out. With a strong flap, it pushed its huge body into the air. Haoyue was not a kind person. At the same time that its body rose, its 5 big heads and 5 mouths had already shot out in the most direct way, blasting towards the clear lake. Amidst the ear-piercing explosion, Long Houchen felt as if he had been hit by a huge awl. Even a powerful weapon like the aria of the goddess of light let out a soft cry, and the huge recoil directly shook Long Houchen's body and sent it flying. However, he also used the demon destruction flash to successfully create time for Haoyue to rise. With a muffled groan, Long Houchen's face became much paler. The same golden light appeared on the General Tier Monster Hunt 64 people under the effect of the Soul Chain. Those cold lights had no intention of letting Long Houchen go. They almost slid along the ground, and in an instant, they caught up with Long Houchen's body. With the powerful destructive power that they displayed when they injured Haoyue, it was obvious that Long Houchen's radiant holy armor could not withstand it. However, at this moment, Long Houchen's body had already risen into the air under the guidance of a white light, and he almost avoided the attack of the white light by a hair's breadth. Everyone felt a cold sweat on their back. The key was that this crisis came too suddenly. From the time Haoyue was attacked, to Long Houchen jumping down, and then to the appearance of a large number of attacks, the entire process was completed in the time of 1 or 2 breaths. In the next moment, a violent roar sounded, and the 5-colored breath landed on the small lake, causing a violent explosion. The terrifying explosion of the 5 types of elements almost turned the small lake upside down. The area of the small lake was only about 100 to 200 meters in diameter. A huge spiritual power wave spread wildly in the air. At this moment, rays of cold lights also rose into the air and scattered in all directions. Taking advantage of this opportunity, everyone finally saw what those cold lights were. This discovery couldn't help but make them suck in a breath of cold air. Long Houchen's chest violently heaved up and down. Just now, he could clearly feel a burst of cold on his body. If he hadn't prepared in advance and left Yating on Haoyue's back, and used the saint's spiritual stove's pulling ability to pull him back to Haoyue's back at the critical moment, it would have been impossible for him to dodge. Because he didn't even have the time to release his spiritual wings. What kind of monster was this? Whether it was Long Haochen or his companions, when they saw the sudden attack of the magical beast, no one could recognize it. This monster was indeed special. Its body wasn't huge, and it was only about 2 meters long. It was a strange fish. Its whole body was flat, but it wasn't wide. It was about a foot wide, and its body appeared flat and slender. However, its appearance was really too sinister. At the front of its head, it was more than a meter long and had a sharp sawtooth shape. Moreover, there were sawteeth on both sides. In a place like the gloomy swamp where the light was very dim, the cold light on the sawteeth could still be seen. It must be known that this thing's entire body was only about 2 meters long. Just the sawteeth at the front of its head were 1 meter long, occupying half of its entire body. What kind of terrifying body was this? The fins at its tail were very large, and could push its body with great force. Moreover, each of the strange fish exuded a sharp fluctuation of spiritual power. This kind of spiritual power was something Long Haochen had never seen before. It was definitely not the water attribute that ordinary fish-type magical beasts possessed. It was somewhat between the wind attribute and the space attribute. Or it could be said that it was a mixture of the two. When these strange fish rushed out, it was clearly propelled by the wind attribute spiritual power, and the front of its terrifying sawteeth emitted spatial fluctuations. It was also because of this that its attack power was so strong. That was space slicing. There were at least a dozen strange fish that appeared in everyone's line of sight. At this moment, under the bombardment of Haoyue's 5 elements, the strange fish that were hit immediately exploded into white liquid that filled the sky. However, most of the strange fish seemed to be fine. Their extremely smooth bodies emitted a faint silver light, and the aftermath of the spiritual bombardment actually slid off their bodies strangely, unable to really hurt their bodies. That's right, it was a magical beast with the dual attributes of space and wind. The most terrifying thing about them should be their attack power. Their defense and speed were also not bad. There was actually such a magical beast in the gloomy swamp. What was more terrifying was that they were also a type of creature that lived in group. There were probably at least 100 of them living in this small lake. Long Haochen took a deep breath, and immediately summoned the 2 holy guards from the Eternal Melody, so that they could identify what this monster was. When the 2 holy guards saw it, they almost said an extremely unfamiliar name in unison. Saw-ray, it's actually a saw-ray. Didn't the saw-ray go extinct long ago? Why would it appear here? The 2 holy guards, who had the souls of powerhouses, usually did not have any emotions of their own, but at this moment, they both showed obvious shock. What is a saw-ray? Long Haochen asked. There was some fear in the 11th holy guard's voice. This is a terrifying magical beast. Their individual combat strength is very strong, equivalent to the existence of a level 8 magical beast, and they are in group. Their destructive power is extremely terrifying. Growing out of the front of their head is their horn. Although it is a part of their body, it is also their most terrifying weapon. This kind of magical beast is amphibious. Their biggest weakness is that they cannot fly. However, their attacks are very secretive. Even magical beasts and humans that can fly are likely to be strangled to death before they can even fly. In ancient times, this kind of magical beast dominated for a time. Afterwards, they met their natural enemy, the giant dragon, and died. I didn't expect to actually see them. In our era, we can only see their existence in ancient books. Long Haochen took a deep breath. No wonder these monsters were so terrifying, they were actually level 8 magical beasts. More than 100 level 8 magical beasts. If they had the ability to fly, his only choice would be to immediately lead his companions into the Tower of Eternity. Otherwise, even if they had twice the number of people, they would not be able to kill them. At this moment, the Saw-Ray monsters below let out a low roar. Their roar was not very loud, but there was a clear sense of emotion in their deep roar. Previously, Haoyue's breath had killed about 3 Saw-Ray, and a few more were injured. They were both level 8 magical beasts, but in a one-on-one situation, Haoyue was obviously much stronger than them. But when faced with so many Saw-Rays, Haoyue could only temporarily avoid their sharp edge. However, Haoyue was not a good-tempered person. Being attacked and injured by them, coupled with Long Haochen's near-death experience, had completely infuriated him. Ambush after ambush was spat out towards the small lake below. Especially the newly born Little Purple, those purplish-red poisonous breaths made even the 64th Commander-grade Demon Hunt Squad feel a sense of trepidation. However, the Saw-Rays were indeed ancient creatures, and they had a special way of defending themselves. A large number of Saw-Rays began to move quickly in a direction. They could clearly see circles of silver-white streamers blooming and rising into the air, forming a large silver-white shield. At the same time, what was even more strange was that the small lake below had become turbid due to Haoyue's bombardment, but under the spread of the silver light, it quickly became clear again, as if all the toxins had been expelled. Yes, if it weren't for their ability to resist poison, these Saw-Rays wouldn't be able to live in the Death Realm. Although Haoyue's breath was powerful, it couldn't do much against so many Saw-Rays. They could only be repelled one by one and couldn't attack. Fortunately, Haoyue had a 5th poisonous head. At this time, their location was surrounded by thick poisonous gas, and it was Haoyue's aura that dispelled the poisonous gas. It was conceivable that if Long Haochen and the rest were to fly in the air with their spiritual wings, even if they used their skills to resist the poisonous gas, their spiritual power would probably be consumed rapidly. It was hard to say whether they could break out of the poisonous gas. Moreover, who could be sure that there were no powerful enemies in the poisonous gas? Haoyue's 5 heads were constantly roaring in anger. Obviously, he was very unhappy about being attacked by the Saw-Ray. The huge wings on his back were constantly flapping, and the spiritual energy fluctuations on his body continued to increase. Long Haochen patted Haoyue's back and comforted him. "Forget it, this is their habitat. We'll just fly over." Although Haoyue was unwilling, he wouldn't go against Long Haochen's wishes. He reluctantly flapped the wings on his back and flew forward, planning to cross the small lake and find a place to land before continuing their journey. After all, flying in the air with 7 people and resisting the poisonous gas was not a small consumption for him. However, Long Haochen and the rest's expressions changed very quickly, because the Saw-Rays that originally lived in the small lake actually chased after Haoyue. They had no intention of letting them go. What are these Saw-Rays trying to do? Long Haochen was shocked. He had to admit that if they landed on the ground, they really wouldn't be a match for these Saw-Rays. Whether it was their bodies, spiritual power, or attack power, it was really terrifying to have so many Saw-Rays. 11th Holy Guard said, "Saw-Rays live in groups and are extremely united, so they are especially vengeful. You killed their companions just now, they won't let you go." Long Haochen smiled indifferently. "They can use this method to deal with others, but against us? I'm afraid they've found the wrong target. We've been traveling for so long, it's time for us to take a break. Let's go back to the Tower of Eternity." Tracking always required a target, and if these Saw-Rays lost their target, what else could they do? They could only return to their habitat. The golden light flashed and slowly spread, shrouding Haoyue's huge body and the rest. The light faded, and the next moment, Long Haochen and the rest all appeared on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Back in the Tower of Eternity, everyone felt a sense of relief. At least they were safe here, and they didn't need to worry about the sudden appearance of terrifying creatures in the realm of death. However, Long Haochen still had a lot of interest in the Saw-Rays, so he pulled the two holy guards aside and asked them about it. From their mouths, Long Houchen obtained some detailed information about the Soreys. Creatures like the Sorey were indeed extremely powerful, and if it weren't for their inherent weakness of not being able to fly, perhaps they would have dominated the continent for a longer time. The reason why they had two attributes was because of their bodies. Their horns had the spatial attribute, and their bodies were of the wind attribute. The two attributes complemented each other. Therefore, their attacks were extremely fast. Haoyue was quite lucky to be able to kill a few Soreys because of its sudden attack, and the Soreys probably didn't expect that there would be an enemy they couldn't deal with, so they didn't put up any defense in the beginning. According to the two holy guards, in this swamp, even the level 10 Anaconda King wouldn't dare to invade the territory of the Soreys easily. The attack power of the horn of the Sorey was probably no less than that of ordinary legendary equipment. Similarly, due to the strength of the Sorey, the body of each Sorey could be said to be a treasure. First of all, the body of the Sorey could withstand the constant surging of the two attributes in its body, and its body was much stronger than that of ordinary magical beasts. Of course, this was under the condition that Haoyue was a multi-attribute freak. The toughest part of the Sorey's body wasn't its horn, but the silver-white skin in the middle of its back that was only 3 fingers wide, which was extremely flexible. Then, there was the terrifying horn of the Sorey. Even if it wasn't processed and simply held in one's hand, it would still be a Radiance-grade spatial attribute weapon. Moreover, its attack power was close to the legendary grade. After all, in the hands of humans, the power of the horn would still be reduced. However, what if the horn was processed? The 11th Holy Guard told Long Houchen that among the weapons passed down from ancient times, he had seen them made from the horn of the Sorey, and all of them were legendary grade. The Sorey's magic core was also different from that of other magical beasts. Its magic core had a special effect called dispelling. It could dispel all toxins and negative things and keep the body clean. After adding spiritual power, it could even work within a certain range. It was also a treasure. If used well, this thing could restrain any poisonous magical beast or enemy. Moreover, it could even dispel the corrosive effects of some dark attribute. Therefore, it could be said that the Sorey's entire body was a treasure. Of course, if one wanted to hunt this magical beast, one would have to consider it carefully. They were quite vengeful. It usually only took an instant for a Sorey to kill an enemy. Moreover, according to the analysis of the two holy guards, there was probably a particularly powerful Sorey in the pond-like lake that had so many Soreys living here. It just hadn't shown up before. The scariest thing about this Sorey that could break through level 8 and ascend to a higher level was that it had the ability to teleport instantly. That's right, it couldn't fly either. However, who could be sure of the height limit of its teleportation ability? What if he was ambushed by this guy? Think about it, the horn and teeth of an ordinary Sorey were already so sharp. How terrifying would the Sorey King be? Long Houchen didn't say anything, but there was someone standing beside him. Her beautiful eyes were gentle, her pretty face was abnormally red, and her breathing was a little rapid. Don't get me wrong, it was not Kai. It was Wang Yuanyuan, who was about to drool. It was no wonder that Wang Yuanyuan was drooling. She had the space attribute, which was very rare among the various professions, and equipment with the space attribute was even rarer. This was also an important reason why Long Houchen wanted to buy her a piece of legendary equipment, but he didn't get it. Now that she heard that the sharp horn of the Sorey was so powerful, it would be strange if Wang Yuanyuan didn't covet it. She possessed the giant spirit god's bloodline, and had also inherited the giant spirit god's shield. However, she only had this one powerful weapon. The mighty miracle god's shield had its limits, and Wang Yuanyuan was very clear about that. Although this weapon could allow her to attack and defend at the same time, for a space attribute user, the mighty miracle god shield was too heavy, especially after it was installed with the silver crystal, its weight would continue to increase. In a long battle, Wang Yuanyuan didn't dare to go all out. In reality, the divine giant soul shield, a bloodline inheritance weapon, should have been used as a trump card and not as a daily weapon. Yuan, I understand what you're thinking. Don't worry, let's think of a way. If possible, of course we won't let go of this good opportunity. Okay. Wang Yuan agreed. Although she was obviously a little uneasy, she couldn't say anything at this time. After all, the soiree was very dangerous. Long Haochen called his companions together. Everyone has heard about the benefits of the soiree. It can be said that its entire body is a treasure. If possible, of course we would like to get a few more soirees. Not only will it be beneficial to Yuan, but even if we sell it, it will increase the strength of our alliance. The merit points we can exchange for would be enough to exchange for good equipment for others. There was no need for Long Haochen to say anything. Everyone's faces were already filled with eagerness. When they encountered the anacondas, everyone had the same thought. Encountering such a rare ancient creature, of course they wouldn't let go of the benefits they could get. These demon hunters lived on the edge of a knife, so strengthening themselves was always the first priority. They couldn't find the anacondas, but the soiree was right in front of them. We need to discuss our plan of action and prioritize. First of all, the most important thing for us is safety. No matter how much benefits the soiree can bring us, we must obtain it under the premise of absolute safety. This sentence was said resolutely by Long Haochen, because the last thing he wanted was for his companions to take risks for the sake of benefits. Therefore, he deliberately emphasized this point. After saying this, his eyes swept across the faces of his companions, and after seeing that everyone nodded in response, he continued. Next is the strict plan. Ordinary soirees are already level 8 magical beasts, so the soiree king is likely to be a powerful level 10 magical beast like the Anaconda King. It's definitely not something we can encounter at the moment. Once we encounter the soiree king, there is a possibility of casualties. Therefore, our target can only be ordinary soirees. For us, the best-case scenario is that there is no soiree king among the group of soirees. However, as a precaution, we can only consider the worst-case scenario. Everyone, let's brainstorm, we must plan before we act. Next was the time for rest and discussion. Although most people couldn't recover their spiritual energy in the Tower of Eternity, fortunately, they didn't consume much before. However, after entering the dark swamp, everyone's emotions were in a state of tension. In the Tower of Eternity, they could effectively relax and maintain their best state for the next battle. After discussing the strategy, Long Haochen didn't immediately lead everyone back to the dark swamp to carry out the plan. Instead, he ascended to the second floor of the Tower of Eternity with everyone else. The Haoyue spread its huge wings and floated above the misty clouds on the second floor with everyone on the back of Haoyue. The one who felt the most novel was naturally Kai. After losing her memory, she naturally forgot everything here. They didn't know how many times they had practiced on the second floor, and everyone's aerial combat skills were trained here. However, until they left the Temple League, they didn't manage to break through the last 2 levels of the second floor. The reason why Long Haochen kept these 2 levels was to continue honing his companions' aerial combat skills. However, he now had a new decision. Haoyue flew forward slowly under the command of Long Haochen. The surrounding clouds continued to pass behind them. In the distance, a huge golden statue could be vaguely seen in front of them. The levels that had been passed before would not appear again. Seeing that the statue was gradually becoming clear, Long Haochen asked Haoyue to stop. Sima Xian said doubtfully, "Boss, are we still going to practice now? It's hard to replenish the spiritual energy consumed." Long Haochen shook his head. To the side, Lin Xian said with extreme disdain, "Baldy, you're really a blockhead. You still don't understand boss meaning? Boss wants to strengthen our overall strength. Watch carefully." Long Haochen didn't explain. He smiled, and the 4 spiritual wings on his back unfurled as he flew out. Ripples of light and the aria of the goddess of light appeared in his hands at the same time. The moment he flew out, his gaze turned sharp. After flying for less than 20 meters, a green light suddenly descended from the sky. Then, a skeleton appeared in the air without a sound. This skeleton looked very strange. Its body was slightly smaller than the 11th Holy Guard, but the number of wings on its back was 2 more than Long Houchen's, a total of 6. As a ball of green flames entered its head, its entire body suddenly burst out with a strong green light. One could vaguely see that there was a strong wind element circling around its body. This skeleton's weapons were also very strange. They weren't normal equipment but 2 snake-shaped daggers. The daggers were also green, and the snake's forked tongue was like a sharp awl. There was no doubt that this weapon would be very destructive if it landed on a person. Glaring green flames danced violently in his 2 eye socket. In the next instant, his body became illusory. Everyone who was very familiar with this skeleton knew that it wasn't that its body became illusory, but that it was moving at high speed in a very small area. It could explode at full speed at any time. That's right, this green skeleton was a powerful existence on the 2nd floor with a strong soul. It was also the real aerial combat instructor for everyone who came to the 2nd floor. A strong skeleton with strong wind attribute. Everyone, including Long Houchen, felt a chill run down their spine when they saw it. They had all been tortured by this green skeleton before. Its ghostly speed was still fresh in their minds. Long Houchen respectfully gave a standard knight salute to the green skeleton. Then, he suddenly spread the 4 wings on his back to the maximum, and a strong holy flame instantly rose up. In the dark swamp, the 11th and 12th Holy Guard proved their value with their powerful strength and combat experience. Just as Lin Xian said, Long Houchen was preparing to conquer this strong skeleton that was likely to be the 10th Holy Guard, and thus increase the overall strength of the team. Against the extremely fast Sores, the 10th Holy Guard was undoubtedly very useful. It was also one of the core of Long Houchen's tactics. It was just that when Long Houchen was discussing with his companions, he put himself in that position. Just as Long Houchen's body took another step forward, the cyan skeleton moved. The speed it displayed was indescribable. Everyone's eyes seemed to have been shattered the moment it moved. Even in previous battles, when everyone learned aerial combat techniques from him, they had to rely on their thoughts and senses. This was because their vision was unable to capture the cyan skeleton's movement. It was evident how terrifying its speed was. The pale green light flashed and disappeared. It reached Long Houchen's back. A standard assassin's 2-handed backstab went straight for Long Houchen's ribs. The green skeleton did not even turn around and only held the dagger in a reverse grip. At the same time, Long Houchen also moved. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he performed a backhand backstab that was almost exactly the same as the green skeleton. However, he used a single sword instead of 2. The moment he faced the green skeleton, he had already held the ripple of light in his left hand in a reverse grip. Chapter 149. The green skeleton's speed was really too fast, and Long Houchen was very clear that if he tried to dodge, he would inevitably fall into its rhythm, which would make it very hard for him to defeat it. Thus, Long Houchen didn't try to dodge. He wanted to compete against the green skeleton in terms of resistance. The green skeleton's speed was really too frightening. After discovering Long Houchen's reaction, the pair of green daggers in his hands suddenly flashed with green light, and 2 green rays of light were shot out, piercing Long Houchen's glorious holy armor. Then, he actually had enough time to shift upwards, and the 6 wings on his back flapped horizontally and horizontally, making him hover vertically. At the same time, his right leg was aimed at the back of Long Houchen's head. If the red skeleton's 12th Holy Guard could be said to be like flowing water, then he could be said to be like a flash of green lightning. His movements were really too fast. Competing against him in speed was something that no one present could do. Long Houchen didn't intend to do that either. Of the 4 wings on his back, the 2 on the left flapped abruptly, turning his body around in a split second. Then, his 4 wings abruptly stopped. His forehead pointed forward, forcefully colliding with the green skeleton's right foot. With a ping sound, Long Houchen's body was shaken, and the green skeleton's body was sent flying backwards. That's right, because of his great speed, this green skeleton could only be called ordinary in terms of both offense and defense. Long Houchen's external spiritual energy had already reached a very powerful level after being strengthened several times. At least, it wasn't inferior to his internal spiritual energy. In some sense, the current him was just like a demon's. Regardless of whether it was the soaking of the devil dragon's inner core or the recent increase in the power of Haoyue's bloodline, Long Houchen had an extremely tough body. Thus, in a head-on clash, he actually didn't suffer any losses. At the same time, he finally gained an opportunity to make his move. Today, he was no longer here to communicate with the green skeleton. Instead, he was here to completely defeat it and make it submit to him. The aria of the goddess of light slashed in midair, directly striking the air. At this moment, everyone felt that Long Houchen had changed. He was no longer a person, but rather a starry sky. It was as if everything was within his grasp. Everyone clearly felt that after Long Houchen slashed out with his sword, he disappeared. Only the boundless sword intent permeated the air. Sword intent, this was the true fusion of sword intent, sword heart, and sword skill. After the battle with a bow, Long Houchen's comprehension of sword intent had reached a whole new level. This sword strike was like an antelope hanging its horn, untraceable. It was like a game of chess, predicting the enemy's moves first. It was to the extent that the lightning-like body of the green skeleton came to a halt in midair. He had no choice but to stop, because if he had continued, his body would very possibly have collided with Long Houchen's aria of the goddess of light. That sword strike full of sword intent wasn't something his body could bear. With a faint flicker of light, Long Houchen's eyes were filled with an intense glint. That was a kind of unwavering conviction. Even he didn't expect this slash to have such a great effect. His whole body entered the state of sword heart illumination. The aria of the goddess of light let him hear a joyful moaning sound. The burst of sword intent was really too powerful. The might of the aria of the goddess of light was almost completely released by Long Houchen. A terrifying sword intent pervaded the air, to the extent that the green skeleton's body was completely locked on by the sword intent. Even though Long Houchen couldn't lock on his position, that green skeleton seemed to have thrown himself into a trap, appearing right in front of his sword intent. Right at this time, a golden figure quietly appeared behind Long Houchen. Immediately, 2 resonant dragon cries resounded at the same time, and 2 immense rays of light swept out from behind Long Houchen. In the midst of the dragon cries, the solidified body of the green skeleton was entangled. Dual dragons of light and rain finally appeared on the battlefield once again, appearing in the midst of Long Houchen's attacks. Right, Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, was revived. After Kyra lost her memories, Yiting regained her spiritual energy and told Long Houchen that Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, the most powerful weapon of Long Houchen, had already been revived. It could now become Long Houchen's weapon once again. Only, Long Houchen already had Rippling Light as his secondary weapon, so he didn't directly use it. Now that he suddenly used it again, Dual Dragons of Light and Rain's powerful restricting ability was fully displayed along with the increase in strength of Long Houchen and Yiting, immediately playing a decisive role. The thick golden light silently rested on the shoulder of the immobile green skeleton. Long Houchen gave it an ardent look. That's right. Even if he didn't use the dual dragons of light and rain, Long Houchen was confident in defeating this green skeleton. But if he did so, he wouldn't be able to guarantee that he wouldn't injure this green skeleton. After all, its speed was just too fast, and without a powerful battle ability, it would be very hard to restrain it. Long Houchen's unstoppable sword intent would very possibly tear its body to shreds. Although this wouldn't really kill it, this green skeleton would need a very long time to recover completely in the eternal melody. But Long Houchen needed its strength now, and wasn't willing to wait. Thus, this meticulously planned battle took place. After a short time of stagnation, the glaring green light in the eyes of the green skeleton gradually dimmed. Lowering its head, it said to Long Houchen in a deep voice, "The 10th Holy Guard greets Master." With a glint of green light, he directly turned into a streak of light, breaking free from dual dragons of light and rain, merging with the eternal melody in Long Houchen's chest. With a smile on his face, Long Houchen's first objective was achieved. With the help of this green skeleton 10th Holy Guard, the completion of his plan became a lot easier. The blue-golden blue rain, hibiscus of light calmly floated in midair. Looking at it, Long Houchen immediately felt a strong sense of intimacy. This heavy sword was linked to his blood vessels, putting away rippling light and aria of the goddess of light. Long Houchen raised his hand, taking blue rain, hibiscus of light in his hand. To his astonishment, this heavy sword seemed to be even more compatible with him after his rebirth. Furthermore, the aura released from the heavy sword couldn't be compared to before. It seemed to have evolved, becoming a genuine piece of legendary equipment. Evolution, that's right, evolution. This was also the most powerful aspect of blue rain, hibiscus of light. In Long Houchen's hands, it had already evolved twice, breaking and then re-establishing itself. Just by holding it in his hand, Long Houchen could feel the feeling of harmony, and slowly comprehend its changes. This was called compatibility. The compatibility between man and sword. Along with his deep comprehension of sword intent, any treasured sword that fell into Long Houchen's hands would have a terrifyingly high degree of compatibility. His comrades watched Long Houchen in silence. Although they didn't say anything, the looks they gave him were burning. Their captain was getting more and more powerful, to the point where they had to look at him from afar. However, this didn't make them feel discouraged, because along with Long Houchen's growth, their rate of growth also kept increasing. Everyone had a clear feeling of this. Long Houchen's rapid growth in strength wasn't false, but as his strength increased, the good things he obtained also kept increasing. And all of these he obtained were shared with his comrades without reservation. Thus, no one was envious of his speed of growth, but instead wanted him to become even more powerful. With such a captain, to them, what they had to do was to keep following Long Houchen and keep improving themselves, making them closely follow in his footstep. Let's keep going. Long Houchen's voice pulled everyone back from their thoughts, and everyone couldn't help but reveal astonished looks. The 10th Holy Guard had already been subdued. Keep going? Wouldn't that mean challenging the final trial of the second floor of the Tower of Eternity? Along with the submission of the 10th Holy Guard, the distant statue became even more distinct. Based on the experience of the first floor, there was no doubt that only the final trial of the second floor was left. Long Houchen turned around and explained, "I am confident that we can pass the final trial. In the swamps of gloom, we have already met several powerful opponents, and now we have to face the snake demon god and Andamari. Now, only by passing through the Tower of Eternity will we be able to directly increase our strength. If my guess isn't wrong, the one we will be facing next is the 9th Holy Guard. If his attribute is as I have guessed, he will be of enormous help to us in the land of death in the swamps of gloom. Boss, let's do it." Sima Xian waved his fist at Long Houchen. Long Houchen revealed a faint smile, unfolding the 4 wings on his back. Blue rain and hibiscus of light were in his left hand, and with a glint of golden light, the aria of the goddess of light appeared once again in his right hand. It could be said that the current Long Houchen was in the most powerful state of his equipment. With a pair of legendary greatswords in his hands, even just by looking at them, one could feel their terrifying offensive power. Slowly flying forward, Long Houchen's heart became extremely calm. This was because of the previous sword full of sword intent. In that instant, he seemed to have gained some special comprehension. He couldn't explain clearly what this comprehension was, but he knew that his comprehension of sword intent had reached a new height, and seemed to be approaching the realm of the holy sword-wielder Yi Wushang. This could be felt from the aria of the Goddess of Light's acknowledgement. The massive statue gradually became clear, exactly the same as the one in the first floor. If not for the faintly discernible mist in the surroundings, everyone would surely feel that they had reached the end of the first floor. The holy necromancer, the statue of the slumbering calamity Electrolux, was calmly floating in the mist. In front of it, a tall skeleton was sitting cross-legged. This skeleton was entirely yellow in color, and at the time Long Houchen's group saw him, a faint yellow radiance started to rise from his body. Long Houchen revealed a happy look. That's right, the one he was about to face was a ninth holy guard with the soul of a powerhouse. And furthermore, this ninth holy guard's attribute was just as he expected. It was Earth of the Earth attribute. Although Long Houchen didn't know why the slumbering calamity Electrolux would set up an Earth attribute holy guard as the final hurdle in this air battle, he was still more vigilant than before when facing the green skeleton. If not for his identity as a necromancer, Long Houchen had no choice but to admit that he was completely convinced by the slumbering calamity Electrolux. For an ancestor to be able to build such a mystical place as the Tower of Eternity and still be able to produce such a powerful ability after 10,000 years, how much wisdom did he have? Although Long Houchen was smart, he asked himself that compared to Electrolux, his current self was far from enough. He was just too insignificant. For this reason, he was completely sure that since Electrolux let the Earth Attribute Ninth Holy Guard guard the final hurdle of the second floor, he definitely had his reasons for doing so. The statue of Electrolux stood there calmly for a long time, as if attentively watching everyone, and that Earth Attribute yellow skeleton slowly stood up from his cross-legged state. His height was very close to the red skeleton 12th Holy Guard, but his body was a lot thicker, and his shoulders were even wider. He gave off a sense of steadiness like a mountain. A faint yellow radiance shone on his back, and two earthen yellow bone wings spread out, keeping his body afloat. A bright yellow radiance abruptly descended from the sky, and two faint white radiances were emitted from his eyes. It was white and not yellow. Long Houchen gave him a look of astonishment, and for a moment, he had a few thoughts. This yellow skeleton probably had an extraordinary strength, probably already surpassed the seventh step. As he was pondering, the yellow skeleton raised both his hands, and at the same time, a yellow barrier appeared in front of Long Houchen. A gentle force stealthily pushed him 10 meters away. Afterwards, the yellow radiance engulfed him like a tidal wave, enveloping not only him, but also everyone behind him who had Haoyue as their foundation. Right at this instant, all the clouds of the second floor of the Tower of Eternity turned yellow. An indescribably terrifying force suddenly appeared in the air, crazily pulling at their bodies, wanting to fall down. Gravity. Long Houchen instantly understood the ability of this yellow skeleton. This should be the long-lost gravity technique of the earth element mages. In shock, Long Houchen flapped the four wings on his back with all his strength, trying to stabilize his body. However, this gravity technique was even more powerful than he imagined. Even with his current spiritual energy level exceeding 14,000 units, he was still unable to stabilize his body, and was still being pulled down little by little. On the other side, Haoyue was in an even worse state. With such a massive body, her own weight was extremely astonishing, and adding that to that, the speed at which she fell was even faster than Long Houchen. Fortunately, the others reacted quickly, and with the exception of Kair, everyone hugged Haoyue's body, before releasing their own spiritual wings, resisting the gravity together with Haoyue. Only then did they manage to stabilize Haoyue's falling body. The yellow skeleton's expression was ice-cold, even indifferent. He only silently watched the people before him. In his soul of a powerhouse, Long Houchen saw arrogance. This was something that the 3 holy guards didn't reveal before. At this moment, this yellow skeleton clearly disdained to attack them. In his opinion, he and his comrades had no way to contend against this gravity technique. In fact, this was indeed the case. Long Houchen clearly sensed that his own spiritual energy was being consumed at an astonishing speed. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before he and his comrades fell from the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. More importantly, the consumption of his comrades' spiritual energy couldn't be recovered in the Tower of Eternity, which would affect their following plans. How you bring them back to the first floor? Plans couldn't keep up with the changes, so Long Houchen made a prompt decision. Although he still had a trump card, he was hesitating whether or not to use it at this time. Once it was used, he would need time to rest and adjust. But right at this time, a leisurely gray radiance broke through the air. That gray radiance was sparkling, but wasn't bright. It looked just like a gray belt of light. A pair of black wings flapped on her back, carrying a sparkling gray radiance. Kai-Er's body floated like a piece of snow, not affected by the gravity technique in the slightest. In a blink of an eye, she arrived in front of that yellow skeleton. The sickle of the god of death swept out with a terrifying cold glint. It instantly enveloped the yellow skeleton's body. All of this happened very suddenly. Although Kai-Er's speed couldn't compare to that of the 10th Holy Guard, it was still fast to a certain extent. Without a doubt, the yellow skeleton was more humane than the previous 3 Holy Guards. He was proud, complacent, and full of self-confidence. In his eyes, these opponents in front of him couldn't possibly contend against his gravity technique in terms of strength. But precisely because of this, his arrogance gave him an opening. Kai-Er's body wasn't affected by the gravity technique in the slightest. The instant she flew out, the yellow skeleton only felt as if the whole space was torn apart by her body. The next instant, an overflowing killing intent appeared in front of him. Long Houchen was also extremely shocked. He didn't expect at all that Kai-Er would make a move at this time, and even completely disregard the threat of the gravity technique. At the time Kai-Er waved her sickle of the god of death, the coldness in her eyes made Long Houchen feel as if his Kai-Er had returned. This made Long Houchen even more shocked and delighted than Kai-Er's powerful attack. Kai-Er, my Kai-Er has returned? Long Houchen had a feeling of warmth in his eyes, as if a liquid would flow out in the next instant. The yellow skeleton's power was just as Long Houchen had guessed before. Kai-Er's arrival was very sudden, but his arrogance was justified. At the same time his body retreated, an earth wall rose up without warning. Although it was crushed by the attack of the sickle of the god of death, it gave him some time to recover. But in the next instant Kai-Er's body disappeared along with her terrifying killing intent, disappearing without a trace. The yellow skeleton was startled, but his movements didn't stop. This was the strength of the Holy Guards. Their battle instincts were practically ingrained in their bones. No matter when, even if their thoughts hadn't arrived, their body's instincts would have already made them move. The 2 thick and powerful palms suddenly collided, and immediately, with the yellow skeleton as the center, a yellow barrier of light spread out. It was a bit like the ring of fire of resistance of the fire element, but this one wasn't only omnidirectional, but also a lot more powerful. At the very least, it was an earth element spell of the 6th step. Furthermore, one mustn't forget that it was instantaneous. At the same time this spell was launched, that pitch-black figure silently appeared behind him, and the sparkling and translucent gray color suddenly flickered. Immediately, a sound similar to the sound of tearing silk echoed in midair. The sickle of the god of death let out a mournful whistle, and unexpectedly squeezed through the crack with Kai-Er's delicate body. Immediately, the word death, which was even bigger than the yellow skeleton, appeared on its body. It was the word death, which was completely outlined by gray sparkling and translucent light. The black figure disappeared in a flash, and the powerful gravity in the surroundings disappeared. When Kai once again landed on Haoyue's back, the cold killing intent on her body disappeared in a flash. All that was left was her blinking eyes, which were filled with confusion as she looked ahead. It was as if she didn't know what she had just done. Everyone was in a daze, even Haoyue was the same. The eyes of its 5 heads all revealed a look of horror. The gray word death gradually disappeared, and the yellow skeleton reappeared in everyone's line of sight. However, the yellow flames in its eyes had already stopped pulsing. Following that, pieces of its body began to crack, turning into yellow dust that dissipated in the air. A deep yellow light descended from the sky, enveloping the yellow skeleton and solidifying its body. This time, it took a lot longer than when Long Haochen's group defeated the 11th and 12th Holy Guards in the first layer. After no less than a quarter of an hour, the yellow skeleton's body solidified once again, but the pulsing yellow flames in its eyes were clearly a lot weaker than before. It looked at Kai, who was standing on Haoyue's back in shock, and paused slightly, just like a frightened human taking a deep breath to calm itself down. Then, it slowly bowed to Long Haochen. "Master, the 9th Holy Guard is willing to serve you." Compared to the previous 3 Holy Guards, his voice was a lot clearer. It was just that it was a lot weaker. Saying that, the 9th Holy Guard turned into a yellow streak of light, flying directly to Long Haochen, merging with the Eternal Melody. The Eternal Melody heated up, and an intense golden radiance flickered unceasingly on Long Haochen's chest. Long Haochen could sense that this 9th Holy Guard seemed to be absorbing the energy stored in the Eternal Melody to restore his body. This kind of situation also occurred when the 11th and 12th Holy Guards were heavily wounded, but it wasn't as obvious as this one. From this, it could be seen how serious the injuries he received from Kai were. Even the Tower of Eternity couldn't completely restore his body. Furthermore, Long Haochen suddenly recalled what Yi Xiaolei had said. As the chosen one of the God of Death, Kai inherited the God of Death's ability to ferry souls, and the ultimate power of the God of Death was precisely to ferry souls. Perhaps the soul of this yellow skeleton 9th Holy Guard had suffered a heavy injury. That was why it appeared so dispirited. Had Kai-Er's strength actually already become so terrifying? Kai-Er's last attack was undoubtedly a display of her formidable strength after her awakening as a god's chosen one. It seemed to be an ability, but didn't seem like one. Ever since the dagger of Samsara transformed into the scythe of the god of death, and became Kai-Er's conventional weapon, Long Haochen couldn't be sure of the extent of her true strength. At least, in that previous attack, Long Haochen asked himself, if he had been the one to block it, not only would he have had to go all out to use his sword intent, but even draw support from the power of the Goddess of Light. It was a possibility, but not a certainty. This didn't mean that Kai was more powerful than Long Haochen. On the contrary, her current strength was inferior to Long Haochen's by a lot. However, Kai-Er's spiritual stove and the weapon in her hand were really too powerful. The scythe of the god of death, transformed from the dagger of Samsara, was a true divine tool. Even after her awakening, Kai-Er still couldn't display its true might at the moment. Flapping the 4 wings on his back, Long Haochen arrived at Kai-Er's side. "Kai-Er, how do you feel? Are you all right?" Having just used such a powerful ability, what Long Haochen feared the most was that she would suffer a backlash. Kai murmured, 7 arts of the god of death. First art, death in childhood. Long Haochen took a deep breath. He understood that Kai-Er's 7 arts of the god of death was the same as her original use of the spiritual stove of Samsara, but with greater power. Without waiting for him to ask further, Kai raised her head to look at him. "I'm fine. I just felt a bit oppressed, and that's all. I just felt that, if I had kept using that kind of power, I would have lost something." Fortunately, it was only for a moment before he couldn't take it anymore. Long Houchen understood Kai very well. Hearing her explanation, he immediately felt relieved, and at the same time, understood the mystery behind her 7 arts of the god of death. Kai listen to me. Long Houchen looked at her very seriously, grabbing her shoulders with his hands that had already withdrawn his 2 swords. The power you used just now can't be used rashly. And even if you use it, you can only use it once. Do you understand? Otherwise, you will be in danger of losing your 6 senses. The reason why you didn't suffer a backlash from the first use is because of the spiritual stove in your body. But you can't use it rashly. Don't use it unless you have no other choice. You have to listen to me, okay? Seeing the deep concern in Long Houchen's eyes, Kai immediately felt some warmth in her heart, nodding obediently. However, in her heart, she was still thinking about the powerful power she used just now. Vaguely, she had also gained some understanding of it. At least, her amnesiac body was more familiar with her own abilities. Right at this moment, the statue in front of them suddenly brightened up. A soft golden radiance quietly bloomed. The statue seemed to have come to life. A huge soul fluctuation immediately made everyone present feel a heavy pressure as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Congratulations, child. You have passed the 2nd floor's trial, so you can continue forward. I will be waiting for you at the final path. Being able to pass the 2nd floor, you already have the ability to protect yourself. But to truly inherit my inheritance, your current strength is still far from enough. You need to become even more powerful and even more persistent. Only with an indomitable determination can you finally reach the other side. I will be waiting for you at the other side. You will have to rely on your own strength in the future. Before you reach the 6th floor, I won't give you any other rewards besides the Holy Guards. I firmly believe that you will definitely be able to reach my side. Puff! A golden pillar of light suddenly rose, as if piercing through the blue dome of heaven, piercing through the limits of the 2nd floor of the Tower of Eternity. It became a passageway to the 3rd floor. Looking at that golden pillar of light, Long Houchen felt a little disappointed. Originally, he thought that since they weren't given any spiritual energy enhancement on this floor, they should have received some kind of equipment as a reward. But things didn't go as he wished. In the end, apart from the 2 holy guards, there was no other help. However, his disappointment only lasted for a moment, and Long Houchen quickly felt relieved. Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. In this 2nd floor, they had already learned aerial combat ability. Wasn't this more important than any equipment? Furthermore, with the help of the 2 great holy guards, their team's overall strength had already surpassed the majority of king-grade monster hunters. Of course, that 9th holy guard of the earth element would probably need to rest for a while. Previously, when facing Kai, he clearly wasn't able to display his full strength. It was only because all his abilities happened to be restrained by Kai-Er's unstoppable god of death ability, and because he underestimated the enemy, that he finally perished under Kai-Er's 7 arts of the god of death. The light in the swamps of gloom was as dim as before. As evening approached, the poisonous marsh gas in the air became even denser. The lake where the saw skates lived was perhaps the only pure land in this place. Faint ripples would occasionally appear on the surface of the clear lake. The lake wasn't very deep, only about 2 or 3 meters deep. If one were to look at the lake from above, they would discover that under the surface of the water, there would occasionally be faint silvery glints. Although the saw skates had a malevolent appearance, they were in fact herbivorous magical beasts, and had no interest in meat. The lush aquatic plants in the lake and the supple vines in the swamps were their best food. Whenever they needed to eat, the group of saw skates would become active. Silvery glints could be seen everywhere on the lakeside. Their figures couldn't be seen clearly, but one could see tenacious vines being cut into pieces, before disappearing. The process of eating wouldn't take a long time, because their speed was just too fast. Afterwards, the lake would calm down. The group of saw skates was different from ordinary magical beasts. They weren't distinguished by size, but by the size of the supple silvery skin on their back. Thus, the more intense the silvery glow of a saw skate, the more powerful it would be. Adult saw skates were magical beasts of the 8th rank. Some of them were gifted enough to reach the 9th rank. But the true kings were genuine magical beasts of the 10th rank. Powerful existences that even the forest boa king had to shrink back. They were also one of the true overlords of the swamp. A faint golden radiance noiselessly appeared not far from the saw skate lake, the gentle golden barrier extending to a diameter of roughly 2 meters. Immediately afterward, one figure after another separated from him, each releasing their own spiritual wings at the first moment. Long Houchen pointed to the air, and everyone quietly soared. This time, Long Houchen didn't release his holy mantle, and everyone forcibly released their spiritual energy to resist the poisonous fog in the swamp. This would undoubtedly increase their consumption by a large margin, but they didn't need to gather together. Long Houchen nodded to everyone, and in the midst of the fog they rapidly dispersed. Red, blue, and green radiance appeared in front of Long Houchen. They bowed slightly to him. Long Houchen gave the green 10th Holy Guard some instructions. The 10th Holy Guard nodded, and with a light flap of the 6 wings on his back, he flew out like a bolt of green lightning. At this time, the only ones left at Long Houchen's side were Kair Sima Xian and Wang Yuan. Chen Ing didn't participate in this operation at all. Lin Xian and Han Yu were nowhere to be seen. Hao Yue also quietly flew away after appearing. He didn't even use his ability to resist the poison. He followed Lin Xian and Han Yu. Long Houchen nodded to the 3 beside him, as well as the 11th and 12th Holy Guards. Prepare to begin. As he said so, he slowly raised the 2 heavy swords in his hands, which gradually turned white. Long Houchen himself also entered a fantastic state. They were all about 20 meters above the ground, which was the maximum height that ordinary saw skates could reach. This was an accurate judgment made by Long Houchen in the previous battle against the saw skates. The clear lake in which the saw skates rested had already gradually calmed down. Along with the arrival of evening, the saw skates in the lake calmed down. They had already passed the time for eating, and the majority of them had already sunk into a deep sleep. Magical beasts like saw skates were usually very fond of sleeping. Although they were very aggressive, they had a very strong sense of territory. They wouldn't easily leave their habitat. Apart from today's situation, like what happened to Long Houchen's group, Hao Yue's attack would undoubtedly be regarded as the most intense provocation, and they wouldn't rest until they were dead. Unfortunately, under the effect of Long Houchen's Eternal Melody's bizarre teleportation ability, they lost their target. Even if their tempers were bad, how could they vent without a target? After destroying the surrounding vegetation for a while, it returned to the small lake resentfully. Right at this time, another uninvited guest arrived. A faint radiance silently stopped 30 meters away from the lake. His figure happened to be blocked by a tall vine, not leaking the slightest bit of aura. The cyan flames danced in his eyes as he scanned everything in front of him. After pausing for a moment, the cyan flames in his eyes suddenly fluctuated violently, as if they had received a signal. After pondering for a little while, the 10th Holy Guard took out his pair of bizarre daggers. His figure flashed, and the 6 wings on his back rippled strangely. Arriving at the lakeside, the 2 daggers in his hands made a cross motion in front of him. 2 green glints of light flew toward the clear lake. Those 2 green glints let out ear-piercing hisses, and a sharp aura instantly erupted. They didn't directly bombard the lake, but collided with each other on the surface of the lake. Immediately, a green whirlwind with a diameter of over 1 meter fell on the clear lake. Chapter 150. Boom! A huge water column instantly splashed up, and even several sleeping sorays were swept up by the water column. One could clearly see that the cyan whirlwind actually sank into the water and burst into a dazzling cyan light. The surrounding water was completely swept up, forming a whirlpool in the water. But number 10 didn't leave. Instead, he let out a shrill whistle and waved his short swords again. 2 green lights flashed in the air and collided with each other. Another green whirlwind fell into the lake. This time it was really a mess. Dozens of silver lights that were closest to the lakeside suddenly soared and swept towards 10th Holy Guard like bolts of silver lightning. The green flames in number 10's eyes flickered for a moment. His body instantly flashed backward. With a skillful turn, he easily evaded the silver light in front of him. Then, he displayed his strength as the overlord of the sky to the Sores with his actions. His green body did not seem to be affected by gravity at all. He completed 9 consecutive turns in the air, dodging the Sores' attack by a hair's breadth each time. Moreover, he was only 3 meters high in the air. The dense green light flickered. In just a short while, the number of sawtooth rays on the shore had exceeded 100. They madly chased after the green figure. However, even with such a large number of sawtooth rays and their speed, they couldn't do anything to number 10. In terms of speed, number 10 wasn't afraid of anyone. Unless he encountered a rank 9 powerhouse who controlled the entire sky, his speed was the fastest in the world. Facing these sawtooth rays that combine the attributes of space and wind, he seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll in the air. He constantly made difficult evasive maneuvers and could often avoid the attacks of the sawtooth rays by a hair's breadth. Then, he slowly led them away. His speed wasn't fast, but the number of sawtooth rays that were attracted to him was quite large. In the air, the spiritual power of the wind and space fluctuated so violently that the poisonous fog in the swamp was torn into pieces. The sawtooth ray's ability to remove all impurities was fully displayed. The poisonous fog couldn't get close to them at all. Every time they besieged number 10, it seemed like they were going to mince him into pieces. But in the end, the green lightning still broke through the siege. The sawtooth rays were enraged. This was the first time they had encountered such a provocative behavior. More importantly, this provocateur was able to escape from their siege again and again. The faint green light suddenly changed its flight pattern from dodging to flying in a straight line. At this time, the 10th Holy Guard finally revealed his full speed. It was really as fast as lightning. In just a split second, he had already pulled away from the Sores behind him. The green light flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The sawtooth rays chased frantically, but they could only watch as the green light disappeared into the distance. Why was it the same as in the afternoon? Sawtooth rays didn't roar, but the murderous aura they exuded was real. It was unknown how many vines had been damaged. After a series of havoc, seeing that they couldn't catch up to the green figure, they reluctantly retreated back to their habitats. Naturally, the speed at which they retreated was not as fast as when they chased after the enemy. Most of the Sores had flown past them, but the ones behind them had slowed down. At this moment, suddenly 2 streaks of dazzling golden light fell from the sky. In midair, the thick golden light was as dazzling as fireworks. The figure landed directly behind the sawtooth rays. In midair, a gentle golden light flashed. The light figure was 10 meters tall, and its appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, the moment it appeared, it seemed that all the darkness in the dark swamp had been dispelled, leaving behind only endless holiness and light. It was as if a sun had suddenly fallen into the realm of death, cleaning up all the filth in the area. The golden figure that landed first spun rapidly like a meat grinder. At least 10 sawtooth rays were instantly sucked into the golden light. Everything happened too suddenly. Although the sawtooth rays' attack power was tyrannical, their perception was only average. When they realized that something was wrong, their bodies had already been sucked into the golden light. Then, a huge golden ball of light leisurely rose into the sky, illuminating the surroundings even more brightly. At the same time, 2 figures landed from the side at the same time. 2 roars sounded at the same time. On one side was a dazzling silver light. A huge shield carrying 4 empty silver crystals fell from the sky. Amidst the dazzling silver light, the shield spun at high speed and bloomed a terrifying silver vortex with a diameter of 10 meters. A large number of retreating sawtooth rays were sent flying. The other ray of light was even more terrifying. The dazzling golden light was mixed with terrifying purple lightning. Like a huge thunderbolt, it struck a sawtooth ray head-on. The huge metal ball smashed the sawtooth ray into the ground almost in an instant. Violent roars erupted one after another, and the sawtooth ray's life aura disappeared in an instant. Only then did the sawtooth rays in front of them react, and the silver light immediately counterattacked in a frenzy. However, it was also at this moment that the huge golden ball of light that rose into the sky earlier descended from the sky, just in time to meet the returning sawtooth rays. The dazzling golden light became the main theme. Amidst the violent roars, the ground trembled, the vines trembled, and the sawtooth rays were shaken and scattered in all directions by the terrifying shockwave and the strong light element explosion. This formed an extremely special situation. The huge falling light ball blew away at least 30 sawtooth rays, and the sawtooth rays that were attacked and the ones that returned were also split into 2 parts by the huge light ball. They successfully blocked the silver figures that wanted to rescue them. Silver light flickered in the air. Long Houchen was like the goddess of light at this time. He had already released his spiritual power to the maximum, and the huge golden figure floating in the air became his greatest support. Every sword strike was accompanied by the judgment of the goddess of light. Caught off guard, the sawtooth rays could only barely resist the attack with their own spatial attribute, and they couldn't even see the enemy clearly. The blue and red figures also descended at this time. Their attacks were simple, effective, and powerful. Once the sawtooth rays that were sucked into the golden vortex were thrown out, they were already covered in cuts and bruises, and they became the best candidates to pick up the scraps. After the initial attack, Sima Xian and Wang Yuanyuan didn't hold back at all, and their strength was completely unleashed. The spiritual stove of purple godly thunder and the vigorous ball of light bombarded crazily. Sima Xian's own attack power was really terrifying. The most terrifying thing about his vigorous ball of light was that once it got close to the opponent, it wouldn't be bounced back, and it could produce a similar absorption effect, forcing the opponent to fight him head-on. The sawtooth ray's attack power was very strong, but the vigorous ball of light was too huge, and it was even a piece of legendary equipment. In the face of the triple blast and the crushing skill, their bodies simply couldn't withstand it. As for destroying the vigorous ball of light, it was even more impossible. The spiritual stove of purple godly thunder and the vigorous ball of light complemented each other. Everything that was covered by the purple electric light would be temporarily paralyzed. The sawtooth ray was a level 8 magical beast, but when it encountered the unreasonable vigorous ball of light while paralyzed, the result could only be a tragedy. The main strength of the sawtooth ray lay in its group. A level 8 magical beast that lived in a group was terrifying, but for an individual, their real strength lay in their attack power. Their defense and skills weren't very good. Under the sneak attack of Long Houchen and the others, more than 10 sawtooth rays were beheaded in just a short while. However, at this time, the effect of Yiting's fallen light began to disappear. More and more sawtooth rays rushed over. Long Houchen, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuanyuan's bodies had already lit up several times, which was caused by the soul chain when they were attacked. They weren't really hurt by the sawtooth rays, but by the collision with them. Facing a direct attack from the sawtooth rays, even Long Houchen, who had the protection of the goddess of light, wouldn't feel good. Retreat! Long Houchen yelled decisively. At the same time, rays of white light shone in the sky, sucking the corpses of the sawtooth rays into the air. Long Houchen and the others spread their spiritual wings and soared into the sky at the same time. The 2 holy guards became the best choice to cover their retreat. When Long Houchen and the others successfully soared into the sky, they turned into two streams of light and merged into the eternal melody. Without any hesitation, Long Houchen and the others flew into the distance like crazy, and they tried their best to fly as high as possible. At this moment, as if sensing the changes on this side, the lake on the other side suddenly boiled. Then, a ghastly silver light shot out at a terrifying speed and caught up to Holy Guard number 10. Moreover, in the next instant, its body disappeared into thin air. In the blink of an eye, it appeared hundreds of meters away. It was instant teleportation. When the silver light appeared, there was an obvious explosion in the air, and the moment it completed the teleportation, there was a series of explosions in the air. What was more terrifying was that all the poisonous mist in the surroundings turned silver. There seemed to be no other attributes in the gloomy swamp except for spatial spiritual energy. The worst-case scenario that Long Houchen and the others had predicted had happened. There was indeed a Sawtooth Ray King among the Sawtooth Rays. Although Long Houchen and the others had successfully ambushed and killed a dozen Sawtooth Rays, they had also successfully angered the Sawtooth Ray King, and it had begun its revenge. That's right. Sawtooth Rays couldn't fly, but the Sawtooth Ray King directly teleported itself into the air, and with a flick of its huge tail, it shot into the distance like an arrow. As a powerful level 10 magical beast and one of the rulers of the swamp, it definitely had a way to lock on to the whereabouts of Long Houchen and the others. Moreover, in just 3 flashes, he had already seen Long Houchen and the others fleeing into the distance. However, it was also at this moment that the Sawtooth Ray King's body came to an abrupt halt. It turned around abruptly and looked in the direction of its habitat. Because of the pause, the Sawtooth Ray King's appearance could be seen clearly. It looked similar to an ordinary Sawtooth Ray. It had a long horn, and the sharp blades on both sides of the horn were shining with silver light. Unlike ordinary Sawtooth Rays, its entire body was bright silver, and the bright silver light was like the most precious treasure. The light was even deeper than mithril and more resplendent than adamantine. At the same time, the light emitted from its body was a mixture of green and silver. Under its abdomen there were 2 wings that looked like broken wings on each side. These wings still couldn't allow it to fly, but it could still glide. As a powerful magical beast, in the process of continuous evolution, due to the changes in the outside world and the existence of its own weaknesses, the Sawtooth Ray King had begun to change its own genes. This Sawtooth Ray King could already glide, and who could be sure that it wouldn't grow wings after thousands of years? The pair of small eyes behind the Sawtooth Ray King's horn were very slender, and they shone with a gloomy green light. At this moment its eyes were slightly narrowed. However, there was a look of bewilderment on its face. At its level, a magical beast's intelligence was already quite high. Faced with the provocation of Long Houchen and the others, the Sawtooth Ray King naturally had to stand up for its minions. However, just as it was about to catch up with Long Houchen and the others, it suddenly felt a great danger. This danger did not come from itself, but from the habitat of it and its clansmen. A loud and clear phoenix cry lingered in the air, and a huge blue flame was gliding down from the sky in the distance. The Sawtooth Ray King suddenly stopped because it saw the blue flame. In the next instant it teleported again, but this time, it wasn't chasing after Long Houchen and the others. Instead, it was going all out to return to its habitat. Although Long Houchen and the others were hateful, they weren't that important compared to its habitat for thousands of years. The dazzling blue flame made the Sawtooth Ray King feel a great danger. If this terrifying fire phoenix fell into the lake, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, it was still a step too late. Just as the Sawtooth Ray King flashed into the lake, the blue phoenix had already floated down and entered the clear lake. The Sawtooth Ray King let out an extremely sharp cry, twisted its body, and was about to dive into the lake. However, it was also at this moment that the lake started boiling. A large number of Sawtooth Rays dived out of the lake in a panic, and the entire lake turned blue in an instant. The surging lake water evaporated at an alarming rate, and the water level of the small lake dropped rapidly. The wetland that was originally covered by the lake water was beginning to be exposed. The Sawtooth Ray King's anger had reached its peak, but it couldn't do anything about it. It was a magical beast with the space and wind attributes, not the ice attribute, so how could it cool the boiling lake water? Fortunately, the high temperature didn't last for too long. When the lake's water level dropped by a third, it finally stopped. This was closely related to the humidity in the air. If it were in the outside world, it would probably be worse. But even so, a third of the lake's water was gone, and it wasn't a good thing for the Sawtooth Rays. They didn't know how long it would take for them to gather so much water again. The clear lake water wasn't only a habitat for the Sawtooth Rays, but it could also nurture a large number of aquatic plants. And the Sawtooth Ray King would be the first to enjoy the aquatic plants. The lake water was still boiling hot, and the Sawtooth Rays wouldn't be willing to swim in it. The aquatic plants at the bottom of the lake would probably be boiled into soup by now. The Sawtooth Ray King's body kept twisting, and rays of silver light exploded in the air, intertwining into a huge silver light net that crazily cut through the air. However, no matter how strong it was, what could it do to air? It was just venting its anger in vain. While in the air, Lin Xian was being carried by Han Yu as they quickly flew into the distance. And Hao Yue was waiting for them high up in the sky. Hao Yue was Long Haochen's last trump card, and he was really there to cover their retreat. At the same time, because of the blood contract, Long Haochen could easily sense his location, so Hao Yue was also their rendezvous point. At this time, Lin Xian's face was already pale, and beads of sweat kept rolling down his handsome face, but his eyes were extremely excited. This afternoon, they were chased by the Sawtooth Rays like stray dogs, and there was no need to mention how depressed they were. This time, it could be considered revenge. Everything was agreed upon by everyone, and the main parts of the plan were proposed by Long Haochen, and then improved by everyone. Long Haochen, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuan were the main attackers, along with Holy Guard No. 11 and Holy Guard No. 12. Their goal was to kill as many Sawtooth Rays as possible. Under the lure of Holy Guard No. 10, the Sawtooth Rays really came out, and Long Haochen waited in the air for them to return to their habitat. At this time, the Sawtooth Rays would be much less vigilant. Moreover, Long Haochen and the rest were all ready to use their most powerful skills. The three of them, together with the two Saint Guards and Yiting, had unleashed their strongest attacks. The Sawtooth Ray's strength was only equivalent to a Type 7 powerhouse, and it did not have a particularly strong defense. Hence, it suffered losses instantly. Yiting's meteor of light played a decisive role, successfully splitting the Sawtooth Rays apart and sending a large number of Sawtooth Rays flying, giving Long Haochen and the rest enough time. Next, it was time for the climax of the plan. Long Haochen asked Lin Xian and Han Yu to leave in advance, and they went around the lake from the side. From the other side, they were ready to release the Blue Flame Phoenix spiritual stove. Whether or not the Sawtooth Ray King was present, when Long Haochen and the rest sent the signal, Lin Xian and the rest had to take action. This was called attacking the enemy's most important point. The one who sent the message was Holy Guard No. 10, who had attracted the Sawtooth Rays earlier. With the Eternal Melody, there was no problem communicating with Long Haochen. After attracting the Sawtooth Ray King, they went to look for Lin Xian and the rest. The Soray King had truly appeared. When Lin Xian saw that silvery light soaring into the sky, he realized that the situation was far from reassuring. Without the slightest hesitation, he used the spiritual stove of Blue Fire Phoenix without any hesitation. Moreover, he used it without holding anything back. The terrifying Blue Flame Phoenix descended from the sky, targeting the habitat of the Sawtooth Rays. The Blue Flame Phoenix was so powerful that the Sawtooth Ray King had no choice but to face it head-on. The final result was better than expected. At least the Sawtooth Ray King didn't chase after them. Soon, the group regrouped on Haoyue's back. Haoyue's huge wings spread out, carrying them through the poisonous swamp and into the distance. Even now, the group didn't dare to let their guard down. The Sawtooth Ray King's teleportation ability was too terrifying. If it caught up, it wouldn't be easy for them to face it. Kai Er didn't join the battle from start to finish, which was a trump card that Long Houchen left behind. First, it was because Kai Er wasn't proficient in using her ability. Second, it was because of the deterrent effect of the Grim Reaper side. If the Sawtooth Ray King really did chase after them, Long Houchen and Kai Er would have to fight with all their might to buy time for their companions to escape. These were all preparations for a rainy day, but they obviously didn't need them now. As Haoyue flew further and further away, the group finally relaxed a lot. Lin Xian gave Long Houchen a thumbs up and closed his eyes. Like Sima Xian, he endured the backlash of the spiritual stove. Han Yu smiled. "Commander, you really have a good foresight." After the blue flame phoenix blasted their habitat, the Sawtooth Rays didn't dare to chase after us. They can only defend their home. Long Houchen shook his head. It was too risky this time. The Sawtooth Ray King is even more terrifying than we expected. When the three of them were being chased by the Sawtooth Ray King, although they didn't really fight, Long Houchen could clearly feel the terror of the Sawtooth Ray King. The spiritual energy in the air had all been converted to the spatial attribute, and even as a chosen, he couldn't feel the existence of the light element. This meant that the Sawtooth Ray King's spiritual energy was probably over 200,000, and not an ordinary magical beast of the 10th rank. If they were really targeted by such a powerful being, it would be difficult for them to escape. Even now, cold sweat was pouring down Long Houchen's back. Han Yu nodded and said, "It was indeed a risk this time. Commander, let's go back to the Tower of Eternity and rest." Long Houchen nodded slightly. Without hesitation, he chanted an incantation. A gentle golden light gradually rose, enveloping everyone. To be on the safe side, Han Yu even released his spiritual stove ability to envelop his companions. Suddenly, Long Houchen's pupils shrank, and the incantation in his mouth instantly became hurried. At the same time, Long Haoyue let out a low roar, and several rays of light shone and fell on everyone at the same time. Then, its 5 large heads roared at the sky at the same time. A circle of terrifying and strange 5-colored light burst out from its body. 5 attribute chaos elemental stripping. A ray of silver light quietly appeared in the air, and was hit by the 5 attribute chaos elemental stripping head-on, and was slightly delayed for a moment. In the next instant, Long Houchen and his companions disappeared in the teleportation, disappearing without a trace in a flash of golden light. The stagnant silver light shook the horn in front of its body, and a sinister look flashed in its eyes. Where Long Houchen and the others were, countless rays of silver light had appeared, and the air was madly twisted. The silver figure also disappeared into the air in the next instant, and reappeared 3 seconds later. It actually wanted to chase into the space to kill Long Houchen and the others, but unfortunately, it did not succeed. That's right, it was the Saw Ray King that was chasing after them. As a level 10 magical beast, its perception was more terrifying than Long Houchen had imagined. When the surrounding air became spatial, everything was within its perception. Although the Soray King had to be cautious when its habitat was under attack, it could still feel it when everyone retreated. After carefully sensing that there were no other threats, the Soray King, filled with hatred, still chased after them. When it arrived below them, it used spatial teleportation to rise into the air. If Han Yu's suggestion had been a little late, they might have really faced the terrifying attack of the Soray King. If Long Houchen's perception had been a beat slower, he would have suffered the same result. Moreover, the most important thing was the 5 attribute chaos elemental stripping that Long Haoyue had prepared beforehand. This spell had been prepared by Long Haoyue for a long time, and at this moment, it burst out in an instant. This bought Long Houchen some time. When Long Houchen reappeared on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity with his companions, he found that the clothes under his armor were all soaked in sweat. That moment just now was too dangerous, and he felt that he was even closer to death than when he faced a Bao. No matter how strong a Bao was, he had not broken through to the 9th rank, and the same went for the Demon Hunter removers. The Serene King was not only equivalent to a 9th rank human powerhouse, but it was even more powerful than an ordinary 9th rank existence, and it was mainly good at attacking. If it really attacked, none of them would be able to escape. In the face of the absolute difference in strength, even a divine weapon would not be able to save them. Everyone's expression was exceptionally ugly, especially Long Houchen's. He had almost made a fatal mistake that would have caused the entire team to be wiped out. No one spoke, but almost everyone was sweating profusely. No one was not afraid of death, especially in a situation where they were so close to death. Long Houchen clenched his teeth and did not say a word for a long time. Hao Yue appeared to be a little dispirited as it lay there. Fortunately, when it used Chaos Elemental Stripping, Han Yu was releasing the power of the Light's blessed spiritual stove, which greatly increased everyone's recovery speed. Otherwise, casting such a powerful spell would have taken an even greater toll on it. Chaos Elemental Stripping was Hao Yue's innate spell. The power of this spell was undeniable, but there was also a flaw. No matter how strong Hao Yue was, casting this spell would consume almost all of its spiritual energy. However, that attack just now had also displayed the true strength of the evolved Hao Yue. The Chaos Elemental Stripping of the 5 attributes could even delay a 9th rank powerhouse for at least 5 seconds. Even a spatial controller like the Serene King could not really break through the seal of this spell. At most, it could not be hurt. I'm sorry, I apologize to everyone. I didn't think it through. As a result, everyone was in danger. As the leader, I'm responsible. Long Houchen looked at his companions in front of him and slowly bowed. Boss, don't be like that. Who would have thought that the Serene King would be so powerful? Sima Xian said anxiously as he endured the backlash of the spiritual stove. Han Yu also nodded. Yes, it's all too unexpected. It's not that we didn't plan it well. Long Houchen smiled bitterly and shook his head. No, as the leader, I was wrong to bring everyone into danger knowing that we might encounter a powerful existence like the Serene King. If any of you were injured, I would never be able to forgive myself. I was wrong, I'm sorry. To punish me, be it the forest boa's inner Dan or the Serene we obtained, I'm excluded from everything. Leader, I'm the one who was wrong. It's all because of my selfishness, that's why. Although Wang Yuanyuan was strong, her eyes could not help but redden. She was undoubtedly the one who would benefit the most from hunting the Serene. It was precisely because spatial attribute equipment was not easy to equip that Long Houchen persisted in this plan. Long Houchen smiled and raised his hand to stop Wang Yuanyuan from continuing. All right, we're all safe. I'll be more careful when carrying out the plan in the future. Everyone, let's take a good rest. After 2 teleportations in a row, we need to rest here for a while. This way, the Serene King won't have to wait for us. Whether it was Lin Xin and Sima Xian who had suffered from the backlash of the spiritual stove, or Hao Yue and Long Houchen who had used chaos element stripping, they all needed time to rest. One must know that when Long Houchen used Blade Storm, he had used ready skill. Although he did not use his sword intent, it consumed a lot of spiritual energy. The effect of Han Yu's Light's blessing spiritual stove had been terminated prematurely during the teleportation process. Therefore, everyone was exhausted. Although they had yet to find any traces of the Snake Demon clan, they had gained quite a lot from this trip. Be it the anacondas or the saw-rays, they were rare treasures. Long Houchen's body and mind were exhausted. Since the snake demon god Andamari had been in the dark swamp for such a long time, there must be something in the swamp that attracted him. It was impossible for him not to know that there were saw rays here. Even he did not dare to touch the saw rays, but Linley and his companions managed to get their hands on them. Although the process was dangerous, the outcome was undoubtedly excellent. They had a total of 11 saw rays. With these saw rays, they should be able to equip each of his companions with a piece of legendary equipment. Therefore, Long Houchen was not in a hurry at all. Their harvest was already more than enough, and it would be better if they could get some more from the snake demons. In case the enemy was too strong to be defeated, it would not matter if they ended this hunting trip. After leaving the Covenant alliance this time, Kai-Er's amnesia was the biggest failure. The rest of the goals had basically been achieved, and Kai-Er's God-blessed constitution had also been awakened. The Tower of Eternity soon became quiet, and everyone entered their own state of cultivation. The pursuit of the Saw Ray King taught Long Houchen a lesson, and he became more cautious than before. This rest lasted for a full 3 days. It was not until Sima Xian and Lin Xian's spiritual stove's backfire effect was gone that they were teleported back to the dark swamp. Long Houchen appeared in the swamp first. It could be said that he was the teleportation array for his companions. He could teleport them to wherever he was. After returning to the dark swamp, Long Houchen tried his best to conceal his aura while blocking the poisonous fog. He flew in the opposite direction of the Saw Ray King's habitat at an extremely high speed. With Haoyue staying in the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen could teleport back to it through blood contract at any time, which was much faster than teleportation through Eternal Melody. Even if he encountered the Saw Ray King again, he would still have time to escape. Obviously, the Saw Ray King didn't have the patience to wait around for Long Houchen. Long Houchen flew forward smoothly. The poisonous fog in the air corroded his protective spiritual energy, and it constantly made popping sounds. However, Long Houchen now had 3 spiritual orifices. Although the light element in the swamp was not dense, it was enough for him to use the disinfectant fog to counteract the consumption on his body. It was much easier to move alone than in a group. With the lesson from the Saw Ray, Long Houchen was glad to travel alone. After flying for half an hour and far away from the territory of the Saw Rays, he summoned his companions again. When Haoyue's huge body appeared in the dark swamp, Long Houchen's vision finally became clear. Little Purple was sucking in the thick poisonous fog like a whale sucking in water, and the poisonous fog quickly dispersed as if it had spiritual energy. Everyone, recover your spiritual energy first. Long Houchen released Ripple of Light to protect them. After all, the Tower of Eternity couldn't help most of them recover their spiritual energy. No matter how bad the environment was, they still had all the attribute. Everyone sat on Haoyue's back to recover their spiritual energy. Little Light and Little Fire each released a skill similar to the spirit-gathering halo. Except for Wang Yuan, everyone else's recovery speed was quite fast. As for Chen Ying, she had never fought before, so she naturally didn't need to recover. Hey! Chen Ying-er's exclamation attracted Long Houchen's attention. What's wrong, Ying-er? Chen Ying-er held up the mirror image treasure god pig in her arms. Boss, look. This girl was very proud. When she first became a demon hunter, she mostly called Long Houchen by his name or captain. But as the whole team grew and saw everything that Long Houchen had done for the team, she was now willing to call him boss, even though Long Houchen was a little younger than her. Long Houchen then realized that the mirror image treasure god pig in Chen Ying-er's arms actually began to emit a faint light. This light was golden, faintly discernible, and sometimes strong and sometimes weak. This is... Long Houchen looked at Chen Ying-er doubtfully. Chen Ying-er placed her left hand between her eyebrows, and a faintly discernible distorted halo sprinkled on the mirror image treasure god pig. Suddenly, Madul Piglet's eyes lit up, emitting a similar light. It told me that it found something good. It's over there. As she spoke, Chen Ying-er raised her hand and pointed in a direction. Only then did Long Houchen remember that this mirror image treasure god pig had the ability to find treasures. However, he was a little uncertain. After all, he didn't see this little guy perform in Dream Paradise last time. Chapter 151. Is its information reliable? Why didn't it help us find the spiritual stove when we were in Dream Paradise last time? Long Houchen voiced out his doubts. Chen Inger communicated with Madul again and replied. Madul said that Dream Paradise has the divine power of the goddess of nature, which shielded its detection ability. It can be sure that there is indeed something good in that direction. It doesn't know the specifics, but there is definitely a treasure with the light attribute. Long Houchen said, Can Madul sense the danger of the treasure? Chen Inger shook her head and said, That's not possible. It can only sense the approximate location of the treasure. Currently, we are about 20 miles away from the treasure. The closer we are, the more accurate its judgment of the location will be. Long Houchen narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, If there really is a treasure there, perhaps it will also be the target of Snake Demon God. After everyone recovers their spiritual power, I will go take a look. He was talking about me, not everyone. Long Houchen had already thought it through. The fewer people there were, the safer it would be. Chen Inger volunteered. Boss, then I will bring Madul with me. Long Houchen nodded slightly. It was necessary to bring Chen Inger along. To be more precise, it was necessary to bring Madul the mirror image treasure god pig. If its senses were correct, then with it leading the way, they would naturally be able to avoid many detours. Only Chen Inger could communicate with it. Long Houchen didn't dare to let it run in front of them. Everything that they had experienced before had sufficiently told them that the dark swamp was truly a place of death. If it wasn't for their good luck, they might have fallen here as well. It was no wonder that the mighty snake demon god Andamari, who commanded a province of snake demons, had yet to achieve his goal after such a long time. Long Houchen didn't bring everyone back to the Tower of Eternity until the spiritual power of his companions was fully restored. In order to better face the challenges that might happen next, he also returned to the Tower of Eternity and exchanged time for the number of teleportation between himself and the Tower of Eternity. After continuous improvements, Long Houchen now had the ability to complete 2 group teleportations in a short period of time. One was instant and the other required a chant. It was very likely that they were about to face the snake demon god. Of course, he did not dare to be careless. He would rather wait a few more hours than let his companions be in danger. Kair stood quietly at the side and watched as Long Houchen and the other companions discussed the plan and countermeasures. She unconsciously pouted her small mouth. It was obvious that Long Houchen didn't include her in the plan, which made Kair very dissatisfied. I want to participate in your plan too. Kair stuck her head to the side of Long Houchen's face. Soft hair caressed Long Houchen's face. There was also a familiar faint fragrance. Long Houchen was slightly stunned. He turned his head to look at Kair, who was right in front of him. He couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. Can you control your combat ability? Long Houchen hurriedly turned his head and said. In his heart, he had an impulse to forcefully kiss her delicate cheek. Kair nodded. Yes. As long as I face danger, I seem to enter a special state. Then I can fight. Long Houchen said helplessly, but how can I let you face danger? What we're going to face next is likely to be the toughest enemy in the dark swamp. Kair said unhappily, I don't care. I'm going anyway. Didn't you tell me before that I'm the vice captain of our monster hunters? Everyone else is going to fight. How can I stay here alone? Moreover, through continuous fighting, I might be able to recover some of my memory. At least I can recover some of my battle memories. Looking at Kair's eager gaze, Long Houchen said helplessly, All right then. But you must listen to my arrangements. Don't act rashly. Okay. This time, Kair agreed very readily. Ever since she lost her memory, she had been with Long Houchen for a period of time. She had gradually walked out of the initial panic, confusion, and helplessness. She realized that the people who were with her were all very good. They all took good care of her. Moreover, they had something in common. That was their respect for Long Houchen. Kyer had heard from Long Houchen that they were the youngest in the whole team. Under such circumstances, why was Long Houchen respected by his companions? Kyer had always been very puzzled about this. Only after entering the dark swamp did she gradually find the answer. Trust came from strength and mentality. As the captain of this monster hunters team, Long Houchen always took the lead in facing the strongest enemies. When his companions needed his protection, he would always appear by their side at all costs. Moreover, he had excellent commanding and planning abilities. Every time he made a suggestion, his companions would definitely agree with him. Under such circumstances, he was still able to absorb the opinions of his companions to perfect his plan. It could be said that Kyer was gradually attracted to Long Houchen's excellence. She gradually developed a trust and an indescribable feeling for him. She was now a little eager to recover her memory. If he really was her boyfriend, it would be pretty good. However, between me and him, where did that feeling come from? What was it exactly? These days, while others were cultivating, Kyer suffered a lot alone. She had been trying to recover her memory, but to no avail. Every time, it was a severe headache that drove her away from the memory extraction. At most, she could only feel some fragments of images. It seemed that her memory and body had been completely separated in two different worlds. What she needed was a bridge to connect the two worlds. The waiting time for the teleportation was no longer as long as 12 hours, but 6 hours was still needed. After discussing the plan, Long Houchen let everyone enter a meditative state. Although Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Ing-er couldn't increase their spiritual power by doing this, it could raise everyone's mental state to its peak. A faint golden light reappeared in the dark swamp. The 4 spiritual wings on Long Houchen's back spread out. At the same time, he tapped his chest with his right hand. Another golden light flashed. Chen Ing-er appeared beside him with Madul Piglet in her arms. Chen Ing-er giggled. Her beautiful eyes were full of charm. She stroked Madul Piglet's back, letting it sense the direction of the treasure. Long Houchen tapped his right hand again. A green figure appeared behind Chen Ing-er. It was the 10th Holy Guard. Long Houchen only gave him one mission, and that was to protect Chen Ing-er. Let's go. Long Houchen glanced in the direction Chen Ing-er was pointing. The holy light barrier had already spread out, enveloping the 3 of them. At the same time, he spread out his perception to the fullest, feeling for any possible dangers that might appear in their surroundings. For safety, Long Houchen and the other 2 flapped their spiritual wings and flew close to the ground. At the crucial moment, the 10th Holy Guard could grab Chen Ing-er from behind and bring her away from danger. In terms of reaction speed, even Long Houchen couldn't compare with this Wind Holy Guard. With the light ripple in his right hand and the heavily damaged radiant sacred shield in his left, Long Houchen walked at the front. Because he didn't need to walk on the swamp, his task of opening the way was much easier. He only needed to cut off some vines that were too dense. After advancing for about 2 miles, Long Houchen suddenly stopped and gestured for them to keep quiet. Chen Ing-er and the 10th Holy Guard stopped behind him. Long Houchen's eyes lit up with 2 balls of golden light. He turned his head and glanced at the 10th Holy Guard. The 10th Holy Guard's eyes also flickered. This was the spiritual connection created through the eternal melody. Long Houchen could use this method to transmit his senses to the Holy Guard. Although they couldn't see in this thick fog, Long Houchen's senses could act as his eyes. At least within a certain range, his senses were quite accurate. The 10th Holy Guard nodded at Long Houchen. In the next moment, it had already turned into a breeze and floated into the thick fog. The green spiritual energy naturally spread around his body, protecting him like a green lightning bolt. The golden light in Long Houchen's eyes became even more intense. Although he didn't need to consume his spiritual energy, it consumed quite a lot of his mental energy. Not long after, the green light suddenly swept back and arrived in front of Long Houchen and Chen Ying. Not only did the 10th Holy Guard return, but there was also a corpse. It was a snake demon that was close to 3 meters long and had a huge tail that took up 2/3 of its body. Its throat had been slit and punctured. Such a heavy injury was obviously fatal. Long Houchen had ordered the 10th Holy Guard to attack because he sensed its presence. With the ability of the 10th Holy Guard, it wasn't difficult to do this silently. It was even more effective than if Long Houchen had attacked himself. It seems that my judgment was correct. Madul's senses are also very accurate. In this gloomy swamp, there should be an existence similar to a treasure trove. It is also the target of the snake demon god Andamari. We are getting closer to it. As he spoke, Long Houchen gave the 10th Holy Guard a thumbs up. Chen Inger asked, "Then what do we do now?" Long Houchen smiled faintly and said, "For the sake of safety, of course. Cut off its wings first before taking the next step. 10th Holy Guard, it's up to you." The green flame in the eyes of the 10th Holy Guard flickered a little more violently, emitting a sense of pride. Long Houchen found a thick vine. After making sure it was safe, he nodded to Chen Ying and summoned the 12th Holy Guard to protect him. He then sat cross-legged on the vine. The golden light in his eyes became brighter, and he nodded to the 10th Holy Guard. At this moment, Long Houchen was not only the eyes of the 10th Holy Guard, but also his commander. In the consciousness of the 10th Holy Guard, a map-like existence appeared. It marked the surrounding terrain and the enemies that appeared in Long Houchen's senses. Although the enemies were very concentrated, the thick fog was too suitable for the 10th Holy Guard, the Master of Wind. Moreover, the snake demons were engaged in a great battle in front of them. Dense dark magic was churning in the air. The source of this dark magic came from a giant pillar that seemed to connect the sky and the earth. The giant pillar was completely black and rooted in the yellow-green muddy water of the swamp. The 5-meter-wide giant pillar soared into the sky. On top of it, a human-headed snake monster could be vaguely seen spiraling. The eyes of the human-headed snake monster would occasionally reveal 2 spots of horrifying red light. With the giant pillar as the center, the poisonous swamp fog within a radius of a few thousand meters was completely dispersed. And it was also within this range that a great battle was unfolding. Many strong snake demons twisted their bodies. Most of them were holding spears, while some were wielding magic staff. They were madly launching destructive attacks at the enemies in front of them. These snake demons twisted their huge tails and were able to move unhindered in this swamp that could fall at any time. There were a lot of snake demons, and they were all more than 3 meters long. It could be said that they were all elites of the snake demons. They were at least grade 5 snake demons, and their opponents were no different. There were dozens of giant forest anaconda pythons and many other creatures of the swamp. The battle was very fierce. It seemed that the forest anaconda pythons were level 8 magical beasts and should have the absolute advantage, but in reality, that was not the case. There were close to 1,000 snake demons, far more than the forest anacondas. Moreover, they were very organized, attacking and defending at the same time. They were also very sensitive to the forest anacondas. Once the forest anacondas rushed into the ground, the snake demons would automatically disperse, making it impossible for the forest anacondas to directly devour them. The giant pillar standing in the middle of the swamp also played a huge role. Circles of faint black light spread out, enveloping the snake demons. The powerful elite snake demons were equivalent to magical beasts of the 6th rank. With such a powerful support, both their battle strength and recovery ability were greatly enhanced. Coupled with the advantage in numbers, they had already suppressed the swamp magical beasts led by the forest anacondas within a certain range. The battle between the two sides had obviously lasted for a long time. However, there were no corpses of the snake demons on the ground. As long as they died in battle, they would naturally not be able to stay on the swamp with their fast movement. They would definitely be devoured by the power of nature. On the side of the forest anacondas, there were 2 corpses hanging on the vines. They had retrieved them by themselves. However, although the battle at this time was fierce, it could be seen that both sides were still in a state of restraint. The reason was simple. The strongest of both sides had yet to take action. On the side of the snake demon clan, a 5-meter-tall snake demon stood proudly under the huge pillar. Its thick tail propped up its tall and sturdy body, and its upper body was also extremely strong. There were many dark blue and red patterns on its body, and one of its eyes was blue and the other red. The top part of its head was bald, and its dark blue hair was combed into a small braid at the back. Holding a snake spear in each hand, its eyes were constantly flickering as it looked at the distant forest anacondas. Next to this strong snake demon, there were 4 petite female snake demons. They were generally less than 2 meters tall. They were twisting their long tails, and their faces were mournful and pale. The most terrifying thing was that their hair was actually in the shape of small snakes. The 4 female snake demons had their eyes closed, but their eyelids were horribly pale. Without a doubt, the extremely tall snake demon was the leader of the snake demons, the snake demon god Andamari, the last of the 72 demon god pillars of the demons. The 4 female snake demons by his side were naturally his 4 Medusas. Although the battle on the field was fierce, they had not made a move until now. Opposite them, behind the huge forest anacondas, there was a huge green forest anaconda with 3 golden lines on its back. It was also quietly waiting for something. Its body that was exposed from the swamp was more than 10 meters long, and it stood proudly. However, when it looked at the demon god pillars behind Andamari occasionally, its eyes would flicker. The forest anaconda king was the true ruler of the gloomy swamp, a level 10 magical beast, the forest anaconda king. Although the serene king was also one of the rulers of the realm of death, compared to the forest anaconda king, its weakness was its territorial nature. The serene king would not easily leave its habitat, so the area it controlled was not large. As long as the forest anaconda king did not invade its territory, it would naturally be safe. However, the forest anacondas were different. They dominated most of the swamp, and as long as there was swamp mud, they could be found almost everywhere. As long as they did not encounter the serene or other natural enemies, they could run amok in the swamp. The ferocious glint in Andamari's eyes had become extremely strong. In order to deal with these forest anacondas, he had paid a huge price. He was the one who first discovered the treasure here. Andamari had always known that there were forest anacondas in the gloomy swamp. As a snake species, he naturally knew that the forest anacondas were very nourishing to him. Hence, he had entered the swamp to poach. By chance, he was surprised to find that the forest anacondas seemed to be guarding something here. Hence, Andamari's curiosity was piqued, and he naturally wanted to find a way to go in and take a look. Hence, there was his first battle with the forest anaconda king. Although the ordinary forest anacondas were far from being Andamari's match, the forest anaconda king was a level 10 magical beast, which was equivalent to a level 9 powerhouse. This was also its home ground. In that battle, Andamari suffered a huge loss, and even almost lost his life here. If not for some special methods belonging to a demon god, he would not even have been able to escape. This not only made the snake demon god Andamari feel a great humiliation, but also made him even more curious about the treasure that the forest anacondas were guarding. There must be something good inside, Andamari secretly concluded. He was ranked last among the 72 demon gods, and after his strength reached the peak of the level 8, he could not go any further. No one would be willing to be ranked last. With such a good opportunity, Andamari was naturally not willing to let it go. If he could gain something that could help him raise his cultivation to the level 9 level, then his ranking among the demon gods would definitely skyrocket. Don't forget, Andamari had his own race, and his position was higher than some of the demon gods ranked after 60. Hence, after Andamari went back to recuperate, he brought a group of elite subordinates and came to the dark swamp in an aggressive manner. However, he was more unlucky this time, and passed by the small lake where the Sore lived. The result was as one could imagine. The Sore king personally attacked, and once again heavily injured Andamari, and the elite subordinates he brought all became nutrients for the small lake. This heavy blow caused Andromalius to recuperate for a full 3 months before his injuries could be considered to have recovered. The terror of the Sore king exceeded that of the forest boa king. If not for the protection of some special abilities of the demon god pillar, he would have died twice. Andamari was, after all, a demon god. After suffering 2 consecutive blows, he learned from the painful experience. He carried out a careful plan. He entered the dark swamp more than 10 times, but he did not go too deep, and carefully explored the situation in the swamp. He also experienced several dangers, but in the end, he more or less understood the situation in the realm of death. After having a certain degree of confidence, Andamari once again gathered a large number of elites, and this time, he even brought Medusa and his demon god pillar. He wanted to succeed in one strike. Without the demon god pillar, the demon god was no different from an ordinary powerhouse of the same level, but with the demon god pillar, it was completely different. The demon god pillar could not only enhance the demon god himself, but it could also greatly enhance his people. Moreover, the demon god pillar was an existence that was close to a death exemption token for the demon god. When fighting with the demon god pillar behind him, the demon god could display almost 150% of his strength. Although Andamari's demon god pillar was ranked last among the 72, it was still equivalent to an epic-grade equipment. This was also an important reason why the Forest Boa King, who was obviously stronger than him, was hesitant to attack. The demon god pillar gave it a great sense of pressure. Snake demon god Andamari was not in a hurry to attack. He wanted to clip the Forest Boa King's wings first. He had endured for so long, waiting for this opportunity. As for the Sore King, he did not dare to provoke it for now. The Sore King had too many minions, and their attacks were too fierce. Although there were many forest boas, they did not gather in groups, and were scattered all over the swamp. Even the Forest Boa King could not gather too many of its people to fight. Just as the fierce battle between the two sides reached its climax, a green figure quietly appeared at the edge of the battlefield. Andamari was very cautious. This time, he had led his army deep into the dark swamp, determined to finish the battle in one fell swoop. How could he dare to be careless? It could be said that the number of snake demon elites here was more than half of his entire tribe. Therefore, he had stationed dozens of snake demons as scouts in the periphery. If any powerful swamp monsters approached the battlefield, they would be able to warn him in time. However, at this moment, the snake demons that were acting as scouts were silently dying one after another. They could not accept the increase in strength from the demon god pillar in the first place, not to mention that their opponent was so powerful. A snake demon that was entrenched in a tree looked around vigilantly, its small eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Faint black spiritual energy on its body dispelled the poisonous fog in the swamp. In fact, its range of vision was not large, and it mostly relied on its senses to scout. Snakes had a very keen sense of smell, which was their strongest sense of smell. Suddenly, it felt the air above its head turn cold. The snake demon hurriedly took a deep breath. It did not detect the smell of any living creatures. Just as it was feeling puzzled, the coldness seeped into its bones. A ray of green light pierced through its head, while another ray of green light directly slit its throat. It didn't even make a single sound before the snake demon slowly slumped onto the vines. The green figure paused for a moment, then dived into the thick fog again. The thick fog became its best cover. Even the other snake demon that was a few dozen meters away couldn't see what was happening here due to its obstructed vision. In less than 10 minutes, the snake demons responsible for scouting the periphery had been completely eliminated. When the green figure returned to Long Houchen's side, the green light on its body had only dimmed a little. Long Houchen slowly closed his eyes, relieving the exhaustion caused by his high concentration. In his perception, the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar was a huge source of energy. When he calmed his mind, his perception became exceptionally clear. The reason why he didn't let the 10th Holy Guard attack the snake demon was because he didn't want to alert the snake demon. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. This was undoubtedly the best choice. After a while, Long Houchen opened his eyes again. Now was not the problem of finding the treasure, but how to truly accomplish the goal of this trip. I'll send you back. Tell the others about the situation here, and let them prepare for battle. I'm better at concealing my presence, so I'll scout around. When the time is right, we'll make our move. Snake demon god Andamari was leading the snake demon army to fight against the swamp monsters. For the General Tier Monster Hunt 64, this was definitely a golden opportunity. Although Long Houchen was cautious, he wouldn't be a qualified monster hunter's leader if he let go of such a good opportunity. The 2 Holy Guards were recalled back to the Eternal Melody by Long Houchen to recuperate, while Chen, Ing'er and Madul were sent back to the Tower of Eternity. Long Houchen wasn't in a hurry at all. After resting for a while to recover the mental strength that he had consumed, he quietly stood up and concealed the spiritual light emitted from his body. Then, he approached the edge of the battlefield. At this moment, he was like a cheetah that was ready to attack. His essence was reserved, but it was full of explosive power. His hatred for the demons made his eyes cold. He was about to face one of the demons' 72 demon god pillars. At this moment, his mind was filled with the scene of himself and Kai being besieged by the demon hunters. His lips subconsciously tightened. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart that was spreading and spreading. Even though the aria of the Goddess of Light wasn't in his control, a strong sword intent still spread from his body. Even Long Houchen himself couldn't control this sword intent. Fortunately, although the sword intent was strong, it only bounced and surged on his body and didn't dissipate. Long Houchen closed his eyes. The eyes were the window to the soul. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to suppress the battle intent and murderous intent in his heart the moment he saw the snake demon god. Even he didn't expect that his state of mind would be so greatly affected when he encountered the strong demons again. In fact, this state of his was completely caused by his suppressed emotions. After Kai lost her memory, one could imagine how anxious Long Houchen was. Only he knew the pain he was suffering. In order to take care of Kai, he could only hide the piercing pain in his heart and swallow his tears. Every day, he had to pretend to smile to comfort Kai and help her restore her memory. These days, Kai-er's condition was stable, but the pain in Long Houchen's heart was deepening day by day. How he wanted to find the Kai-er that he deeply loved. He regretted it and was extremely painful. If he had been more determined at that time and forced the heavenly crystal not to start the battle, maybe none of this would have happened. How could others see the self-blame in his heart? At this moment, although he wasn't about to face the murderer that caused Kai-er to lose her memory, he was also a powerful enemy of the demons. The suppressed emotions in his heart suddenly produced a state that was close to a blowout. In addition, his understanding of the sword intent had gradually deepened these days. Suddenly, his emotions and the sword intent merged into one, which resulted in the current state. There was no doubt that Long Houchen in this state was absolutely terrifying, even terrifying. However, at the same time, if he couldn't get an effective vent in this state, then the blow to his own state of mind would be huge. This had nothing to do with strength. It was entirely due to psychological factors. Quietly approaching the battlefield, Long Houchen hid his figure in the poisonous mist. His self-control was very strong after all. After a short period of closing his eyes, he was barely able to control his emotional fluctuations. He slowly opened his eyes and looked from the edge of the battlefield into the battlefield. He saw the huge demon god pillar at first glance. Yes, this must be the demon god pillar. Long Houchen had seen the root of the 72 supreme rulers of the demons more than once. In particular, the demon god pillar of the demon emperor gave him a huge shock. At this time, he naturally recognized it at a glance. However, he didn't look at Andamari because he was afraid that Andamari would feel his existence under the influence of his aura. Silently calming his heart, Long Houchen quietly watched the changes on the battlefield. At this time, the attack of the snake demons was getting fiercer and fiercer, and the anacondas were losing ground. Although these huge anacondas had strong defense and were shockingly strong, a strong man couldn't fight against many people, and a strong tiger couldn't fight against a pack of wolves. There were less than 20 anacondas in total, and they were all covered in wounds. They kept shrinking their defensive line, and their injured bodies gradually shrunk into the swamp, only revealing half of their bodies to fight the snake demons. The body of the snake demons made them completely unaffected by the terrain of the swamp. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, and wave after wave of attacks constantly pushed the dark spiritual energy to the strongest level. Often, an attack from 3 to 5 snake demons could leave a deep wound on the body of an anaconda. The anaconda king began to growl, as if urging its own people. At the same time, its huge body began to twist uneasily, and it was obvious that it could explode into an attack at any time. From the looks of it, the situation of the anacondas wasn't too good. If this continued, perhaps the anaconda king would make a move. And the snake demon god obviously wouldn't let it interfere with the battle on the main battlefield. With the deterrence of the demon god pillars, the battle seemed to have lost its suspense. Long Houchen couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Indeed, it was better to come at the right time than to come early. This timing was really too advantageous for him. However, how could he help the anacondas? The best outcome was naturally to let both sides suffer losses. Moreover, he couldn't let the snake demon god escape. Long Houchen still didn't act rashly. At this time, the best choice was to wait and see. Moreover, he didn't have a complete plan in mind. At the same time, he was also observing the anaconda king's position. He could vaguely see that there seemed to be a deep cave behind the anaconda king. This cave was very strange. There were thick vines all around, and the entire cave seemed to extend underground under the protection of the vines. Long Houchen also saw a bit of it when the anaconda king twisted its body. Roar! A shrill roar erupted from the anaconda king's mouth. The dark swamp king was obviously unable to hold it in any longer. It was easy to imagine how furious it was when the enemy broke into its lair and slaughtered its own people. No matter how much it feared the demon god pillars, it had no choice but to fight when the other party threatened its survival. The anaconda king's roar had an immediate effect. All the anacondas suddenly stopped moving. Then, balls of greenish-black light that Long Houchen was familiar with shot out and bombarded the snake demons. This time, the anaconda's movements were so uniform that the snake demon god Andamari didn't have time to mobilize his subordinate. In the violent explosion, more than 50 snake demons at the front were instantly blasted away. Their bodies were smashed into pieces in the air, and their blood splattered everywhere in the swamp. The moment the anacondas spat out their inner cores, they suddenly leaped up and crashed into the group of enemies. They used their powerful strength to force the snake demons to retreat. After swallowing their inner cores, they all burrowed into the swamp and disappeared. After suffering such a sudden and violent blow, even snake demon god Andamari couldn't hold it in any longer. These were all his elite subordinate. If one of them died, there would be one less. It wasn't easy to nurture 5th or 6th grade snake demons. How could he not feel the pain? A shrill scream came from Andamari's mouth. The 4 Medusas standing beside him all did the same action. They opened their eyes. The 4 Medusas opened their eyes at the same time. In the distance, Long Houchin almost subconsciously closed his eyes. When he felt the threat disappear, he opened his eyes again and immediately gasped. Among the anacondas that had just launched a powerful attack and were in the process of escaping into the swamp, 3 of them didn't have time to completely enter the swamp. At this moment, their upper bodies were frozen on the surface of the swamp, and even the swamp around them was frozen. Petrification. The Medusa's innate ability was also one of the most terrifying abilities of the snake demons. Even snake demon god Andamari couldn't control this skill. It was exclusive to the Medusas. The snake demons naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. The 3 petrified anacondas instantly turned into pieces under their attacks, and it seemed like they wouldn't survive. The Anaconda King was also attacked. 3 of the 4 Medusas attacked the anacondas, but the tallest one targeted the Anaconda King. Her goal was simple: to prevent the Anaconda King from interfering.